Okay, we're on. We're on. Yep. How you doing, people? Welcome to the Snake Room podcast. It's been a few weeks, I know, but we're back with a good one tonight. So the reason I haven't been weekly is because obviously things are getting back to normal. So I've had to take time away from the podcast and whatnot, concentrate on my day-to-day business, get that back on track, get ready for when we're actually come out of full lockdown. And so going forward, I think I'm going to try and do 2 to 3 a month, and we'll see where we go with that. But anyway, what's up, people? Give us a shout out if you're in the comments. Drop a comment, and I'll get you a shout out. Also, as normal, anyone wants stickers, please hit me up and I will get some stickers sent out to you. Got some more on the way. So yeah, what is up? Jamie, how you doing? Woodshed Royals, evening. Hope you enjoyed the nice weather today. Well, it's been nice here. I don't know where everyone is. How you doing, Huntston Herps, people? Matt 777, how you doing, mate? In the building. Hello. So let's get this thing cracking. Let's get it started. Let's get the man himself on the podcast. JP Reptiles, how you doing?
What's going on? Thanks for having me on your show. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, really appreciate you dropping in. First Absolutely. In the national guest. Awesome. So what I was saying quickly there, like I've taken a step back a few weeks ago now to concentrate, get my business back up running. So whereabouts in Canada are you?
I live just outside of Toronto in Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the sort of COVID situation where you are? Like how's it all going? Is stuff getting back to normal or?
So we live in a very liberal area. What I mean by liberal is left leaning. So, pro lockdowns, pro shutdowns, pro staying in your house. We've been locked down for pretty much, I think, almost 2 years now. And kids have been out of school for almost 2 years. It's a real shame, really. Wow. All the miseducation and the businesses that are just falling apart. And it's really sad to see all of that. But, we've had 3 rounds of reopening, and then we'll get 500 new cases show up afterwards.
Right.
And then they'll shut the whole country down again.
I see.
So yeah.
Is there sort of, is there a vaccine rollout? I mean, in this country, I think it was at least 50% of all adults have had 2 lots of vaccines so far. Just wondering if there's anything like that over your side.
Yeah, I think we're lagging behind our neighbors to the south, the States, but I think they said something about 60 or 70% of adults have been vaccinated. I personally have not been vaccinated, but I know a large part of the population has been vaccinated. But I mean, they have some crazy things going on right now. I mean, like I said, we've been locked down. Schools have been closed for 2 years. The Canada-US border is closed to driving traffic. You can still fly to the States, but if you fly to the United States and come back to Canada, they make you go in a federally approved quarantining hotel, and you have to stay there for 4 days under federal watch, under your own dollar, pay for everything until they decide to release you. It's just crazy.
Right, I see. Yeah, we've kind of got something like that in this country. We have red, amber, and green countries we can go to, and basically it changes all the time. You're taking a risk if you go to a green country. There's no reason while you're away in that green country it couldn't change to amber, and it happened the other week in, I think it was Portugal. Everyone was trying to get a few flights back before it changed back to amber, so they'd have to quarantine. And yeah, it's just, I don't know why people waste their money going on holiday at the moment, taking such a big risk just to get a bit of sunshine. It's not worth it, in my opinion.
I think my opinion on this situation is, and not everybody might agree with my opinions. I think people I think governments and the country should be at, doing the best they can to manage risk for the people that are most vulnerable. I think that's the most important, like long-term care facilities, hospitals, that kind of stuff. But for the general folk who are healthy or just want to live their life, I think people should have the liberty to just live their lives. I've personally been in lockdown in my house for almost 2 years, and I'm not going to lie, depression is a real thing. There's only so much you can stay in your house and stare at your walls all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think as long as we manage the risks for our most vulnerable, I think the rest of the population should be at will to decide whether or not they want to, stay in their houses or if they want to go for a walk in the park. And it almost seems like some of our laws are just silly. Like they'll allow 1,000 people to line out outside of a box retailer store, but they'll shut down a golf course where you're the only person out in the middle of a green.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how does that make any sense? It just makes zero sense.
Yeah. A few of our laws are pretty much like that at the moment, but we were supposed to come out of complete lockdown on the 21st of this month, but it's just been put back a month to get more people vaccinated. They just didn't want to take the risk right now, so they've put it back 4 weeks just to allow extra time for more people to get vaccinated, and then we shouldn't have any restrictions at all. But what that actually means, I'm not entirely sure. If we still have to wear face masks in shops and stuff like that, I'm not sure until it actually happens. And hopefully it doesn't put it back any further than another 4 weeks.
Yeah.
That's sort of the situation over here. We've got Gav in the building. How you doing, Gav? So you talk to Gav often?
I do. He's been helping me with setting up my new rodent operation. So he's been giving me a lot of tips and advice. Him and DK Royals. I think he's out in your neck of the woods as well, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. So he's been helping me as well. Both of them have been extremely helpful, and we just got our first litter of ASFs down 2 days ago, actually. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the mother ate the entire litter. So. So is this your first time breeding AFS at all? Yeah. So if anybody's watched the last couple of podcasts I did, I touched on it. So basically what happened was we had a bit of an issue going like last winter with rodent supply. I mean, getting quality rodents is already challenging enough. And then when you do find quality rodents, those very few guys that are producing quality are so stretched thinly because there's so much demand that it's hard for them to keep up for everybody. So it's like we had a real shortage over the winter, and it affected my clutches, it affected my season, and it's not going to be as large of a season as I was really hoping. It's still going to be decent, but it's not going to be what I was expecting. And I basically just told myself, I said, you know what, like I need to make adjustments, and I need to make sure that going into next year, because next year is going to be huge. I mean, I've got 21 females just the other day that I pulled off of my grow up rack that I've moved to the potential breeder rack. And then I've got another dozen females that didn't go this year. And then I've got another dozen females that are going. So like we're talking 30 to 40 females next year. And I want to make sure that, food is consistent. It's good. Now, the reason why we decided to go with the ASF route is, it's just for where I live and how stinky rats are, it just is not going to work. There's no way that we're going to be able to produce rodents until we change out a few things where I am from. I mean, ASFs are not as smelly. They, like, for example, in my current setup right now, I have about 80 ASFs, and they don't even smell as bad as 5 rats.
Right.
Like,
okay.
It's a huge difference. So what we basically decided to do was, okay, you know what? I'm not getting good feeding responses out of, I would say 30% of my collection because they're just picky, or everybody has those animals in their collections, right? So we're going to be producing ASFs ourselves, so we don't have to drive all over the country or the province looking for them for next season. And we're going to be feeding those animals to make sure that they have consistent supply. And we're going to continue buying rats for the rest. So that's going to do 2 things. One, is going to lower my rodent bill because I'm going to be able to supply half my collection or a portion of my collection on ASFs that are picky anyways, that don't eat anyways. And then it'll require me to buy less rats for next year, which means less a headache trying to find them from another breeder. So we're trying to solve multiple problems at the same time here with the ASF operation.
So when you say get rats in, do you mean frozen or live?
So right now I'm feeding live, and I'm going to continue feeding live for sure. But I might start I want to experiment a little bit, just because I like trying out new things.
Yeah.
And I know getting hatchlings started on frozen is not a big deal. And one of the downsides of feeding live, and this is the only downside to me, is because my collection is on paper. You leave a rodent in a bin for even just 5 minutes, and there's 20 craps everywhere and piss all over the place.
Yeah.
So what happens right now is I'm doing my feeding, and it takes me, a few hours to go through the feeding, because I start with the rats, and then whatever, picky animals, and I got to move to ASFs, and I have some mousers as well that I bought as mousers that I feed mice. So I go through the list of different rodents. And what I have to do after I feed is I have to literally take out every water dish and clean every single tub. Yeah. Because there's so much rodent poop everywhere. So I spend my feeding day is actually a combination of feeding and deep clean day. And it usually lasts me about 8 to 9 hours.
Right.
So I do want to experiment a little bit with the hatchlings, maybe grow up some holdbacks on frozen and see how well they do. Because I do know some guys, like there's a guy, I don't know if you know him, Garrett DeMeyer in the United States.
Yep.
He has a huge collection. I mean, we're talking hundreds of animals, and he's primarily a frozen guy, and he has success with it. So I don't know if it's something I'll transition to, my whole collection, but I'm definitely curious to see if some holdbacks, if how they would respond to frozen, and see if I can grow them up on frozen, and if that would alleviate some of the cleaning nightmares on feeding day.
Yeah. You're one for cleaning as well, aren't you?
Yeah, some people criticize me. They say I'm a little too clean. Like even my rodents. DK told me he's like, well, when's the last time you cleaned them? Because I called him up and I was like, hey man, like my whole litter got eaten, and he was like, when did you clean them? I said a couple days before. He's like, mate, you just got to leave them alone. I know they're not snakes, they're rats. They can be a little dirtier. Leave them for a week. Don't stress them out. Leave them alone, that kind of thing. So yeah, sometimes I get a little carried away. I like to operate in a very clean environment. I put everything away when I'm done in my facility. Everything is neatly put. It's always how I've been. My whole life, I've been a kind of a neat freak.
Yeah. So I started breeding ASFs a few years ago, and then I converted to rats. And the only reason was that the production on the ASF started to slow down. So I kind of wanted to, obviously the rats are a lot quicker. And what I noticed, I don't know how you set up your ASS, but the rats, what I did to reduce probably like 80% of the smell is use some over here. It's like wood pellets. They're sort of like
we have the same thing. Yep.
Yeah, I put them in the base, and then put like the wood chip, what they actually sit on top, and it reduced the smell by so much. Like literally the rats smell as bad as ASFs in the end.
Really?
So just a little tip for you. Just if you ever so you're not producing any rats whatsoever?
So we might. So we're right now. I haven't talked much about it, but I am going to make a future YouTube video on it. We're just trying to close out a deal right now on a 35-foot long by 15-foot wide building, and we're going to be moving the ASF operation there. And then depending on these are things I'm going to, because I've never produced rodents before. I don't know much about it. So this is going to be a learning process for me, but I might start off, because I think ultimately, anybody who's breeding reptiles, whether it's a snake, lizard, or anything, I think if anybody out there has the ability, or if they don't have the ability, they want to work towards gaining the ability to produce their own food. Because like I talked about it before, when you buy rodents from somebody, your entire business success is in someone else's hands. And there's nothing worse in business than relying on someone else for your success. That's a terrible way to run business. So I am one of those guys. I'm in that group of people that it doesn't have the luxury of just building I'm in a subdivision. I do have a fairly large lot, but I still can't put up a building in my backyard and have a whole rodent operation. So we have to be mindful of that. But we are closing out a deal on this space. It's about 15 minutes away from my home. Okay. And we're going to be setting up ASFs in there for now, because right now my focus is all of my good eaters, they're great. I mean, I don't have to worry about them. I can go and buy 50 or 100 rats tomorrow, and they're going to smash them. It's great. I'm not worried about those ones.
Yeah.
Right now, what I'm worried about is my picky stuff, the stuff that I've developed poor eating habits. I want to get these animals on a consistent diet of ASFs, and I don't want to be like last winter where, I call up my guy and he says, "Oh, sorry, I don't have any ASFs this week. You have to wait a month." I don't want that problem again. I want consistency so that we get more clutches and the better growth rate. So for now, we're going to be starting with the ASFs, and we're going to be focusing on getting those picky animals taken care of while still buying rats for everything else. Yeah. I've talked to Gavin, I've talked to DK, I've talked to a few guys in the States, a couple of guys in Texas. I've literally done my rounds, and feeding the entire collection ASFs might be something we consider depending on my success with breeding them. If I'm comfortable and confident that I'm successful with it and I'm doing a good job and I'm getting the production I need, we might consider that. I'll never feed like hatchlings ASFs. I always want to keep stuff on rats because there are people around the world that can't get them.
Yep.
And you don't want to sell a hatchling to anybody that's, potentially might be. I think a good eater, it doesn't matter what they eat. I think it's a bit of a myth. A good eater will eat anything. Doesn't really matter. The picky ones, if they get the smell and the taste of an ASF, they might not go back to a rat. It's possible. I do have 2 animals like that in the entire collection. So it is plausible, but I'll always buy rats. But if eventually the long-term goal, if I could produce my personal ASFs and feed my own personal collection, all of that, and all I need to do is buy, 20 pups, 30 pups, and 30 weans every week versus 200 total rats, it would just it would bring a lot of stress down.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're doing it the right way. Starting off with ASFs and then eventually moving on to rats. Like once you get onto the rats, it's plain sailing all the way. Like the ASFs are, they're not exactly hard. They're just difficult sometimes. And so your colonies, like what ratio are you doing in your colonies?
Right now, just because I'm tight on space where I am, I'm on 1.3. I would like to get that down to either 1.2 or 1.1, but we're going to be waiting until we close out the building and we have a little bit more space to work with.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's decent.
But I'm like going ham on them. I mean, like I've got like a premium grade, all natural chicken based formula dog food with the right protein content. I've got mixed seeds. I give them veggies. Some guy yesterday gave me an idea to give them eggs. Apparently they love eggs. So I hard boiled a dozen eggs.
Yes, I've tried that before. Yeah.
I literally, my partner is looking at me last night. She's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm sitting there cooking a dozen boiled eggs, not for myself, but for the rats.
Yeah. Gourmet meal.
Yeah, so I chopped them all up, and man, they went nuts for it. They didn't like the whites so much, but they love the yolks. Yeah. So I'm trying to give them as good of a diet as possible because I was told that the success to breeding ASFs really comes down to their diet. And if you just nail that diet down, and maybe I'm overthinking it, maybe I just should slap some lab blocks on the top of the cage and just leave them alone. But I'm just trying to give them as best of food as possible. I'm trying to get them with great nutrients because I not only want to produce ASFs, but I want them to be lean, healthy, full of protein. I want them to be good food for the animals because you are what you eat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm trying to
makes, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Was it Gav ASFs?
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping. Like ultimately, so I think the end goal would be, again, I never want to produce rats on a large scale. I wouldn't be able to handle the smell and the amount of time it takes. Like you can leave a bin of 3 ASFs alone for a week and a half, and it's not going to be anything major. But you have 3 rats in a bin, you got to change them every 2 days, right? So the amount of time that is required to maintain rats is I don't have the time for that. So ultimately the goal would be if I could eventually, in a year or 18 months from now, supply my own personal collection all on ASFs and maybe just have 1 rack of rats that is enough to grow up a few weans and a few pups to take care of hatchlings and stuff for sale. I think that would be the ultimate, best setup, best case scenario going forward. So that would be the ultimate goal, I think.
Yep, absolutely. So when I first started doing ASS, I sort of like, it was on a whim. Someone offered me some ASFs. I took them. I was like, okay, yeah. Start breeding them. So I had pretty much, how many did I get? Probably like a 4-in-1 colony, but I had them in kind of like something a little bit longer than a V70.
Yep.
And they produced probably the best yield I've ever produced when I just left them all in there. Like there must have been about 70 or 80 in there.
Oh, wow.
The odd occasion that you'd come in and 2 of the males had fought to the death. But you just had to be a bit cautious. Like when they got up to a certain size, you'd take the males out and you'd leave about 3 or 4 in, and then there'd be about 30, 40 females in there. And that kind of worked for quite a while until they made a hole and they all escaped. Yeah, that kind of stuck. But like I've tried so many different ways, and for me, that was the best yield I ever had. So as I talked to you the other day, actually, basically, I had all these in there, and then all of a sudden an albino turned up. I was like, oh, that's cute. I'll keep that one. And in the end, I was just overrun with albino. I kept all the albinos, and like I said, I heard
it's funny. I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah. I can't remember when I heard that they grow slower, and basically I just had like a 4-in-1 colony, and they'd do exactly what you said. They'd give a litter, and then I'd come in the next day, it'd all be gone. And in the end, I was just like, okay, you gotta go. Like,
it's funny you mentioned that. I don't know, like maybe Gavin, who's in the chat right now, could comment on that. I don't know if it's true. I do know that I have one albino female, and she came in with my original box, and they're all the same size. They're all weans. I got a box. My first order of 20 female ASS was, there's 20 of them. There was only one albino. And half a dozen of them are, you don't use the term gravid with ASS, but they're pregnant, right?
Yep.
I was going to say gravid. And all the others are like definitely, 10, 15 grams larger than her. She's lagged behind in size. So when you said that, I actually went back out there and I looked at her and I'm like, maybe that's plausible, because she's healthy. She's great. She eats, but she does lag behind size on everything else that was in that box. So is there any truth to that? Possibly. I think it might be possible.
Yeah. So what you just said, like the gravid thing, I've got a friend who calls me. He's like, oh, how are the ASFs? And I'm like, oh, she just laid a clutch. I'm like, no. She's a litter. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, I don't have to worry about my first time ASF mom having the right protein because she ate her whole litter. So she must have a lot of protein in her now.
But was it actually her? Or was it? Did you? So no, you wouldn't have separated them because.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember checking on her because I knew she was due any day. Because it's funny enough, when I first got the box of weans, my rodent supplier told me it's about 3 months. So I tracked it. So I was like, okay, by the end of June, I should be getting my first litters. And long and behold, I was a couple of weeks ahead of schedule. So I checked on her, and I just remember seeing one baby underneath her. It was alive. It was doing great. It was sucking on one of her teats. Yeah. Or nipples, whatever. Your teat is a cow term, but whatever, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But then I saw like little bits of arms and legs everywhere in the tub. So I don't know how many she dropped. I don't know if she ate them or if the other female ate them. I have no idea. And yeah, and then the next morning I came and the last one was gone.
Damn, man.
So I was told, but I was told by many experienced ASF breeders that not to panic. It's very common for first-time mothers to eat their whole litters. Nobody really seems to understand why. Because that was the first question I asked one of my friends was like, hey, should I feed her off? Does that mean she's a bad mom? He's like, absolutely not. Keep her, let her go again. She should ovulate again in 21 days and give her another opportunity. He's like, there are some moms who are just bad moms. And I think that's one of the reasons why guys like to talk about keeping the colony small, because it gives you more tracking ability. You actually get to physically see how many babies were laid by who. I think it's very important information to know so that you can wean out the ones who are not good producers and don't do well. So that's one of the benefits. And in this case, he was said, just give her another opportunity, see what she does. It's not uncommon for first-time moms to eat the whole litter, and she should turn the corner after that.
Yeah. What was I going to say? The best breeders are white with brown saddles. Other seems to struggle.
There you go.
Yep.
And my friend told me too, he was like, if you had an established colony of breeding ASFs, I mean, he said he would just feed off a female, even if it was a first-time mom. If she eats her litter, she's gone immediately. But he said, because you're starting a colony and you're growing them, you don't really have the luxury of picking out the ones that are chewers, the ones that are bitey, the ones that are, you just kind of got to breed everything right now, get the colony established, and then you can make tweaks and adjustments once you start getting production.
Yeah. See, I don't care if they eat their litter, but what annoys me is when they pull all the food through just for the hell of it, then they've got to go. Does my head in. Absolutely.
They are a little challenging, but they're fun. They're kind of fun.
Yeah. They are cuter and a lot easier. Like my kids, I've got a 6 and a very nearly 8-year-old, and the ASFs are so much easier to handle than the rats. So that's why I sort of keep them around as well. And mine aren't aggressive. I've never had an aggressive ASF. And some people say, I never touch mine. They're so like nippy.
Oh, they're nasty. I got some that lunge at me.
Wow.
Yeah. If I even put my hand in there, they'll come from the other side of the bin and run to the front and lunge at my hand.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Damn. I know in some, is it right? In some states they're banned.
Yeah, Georgia and the United States, you're not allowed to have them. Same thing with California, and there's a couple other places I don't remember. It has to do with agriculture. If they get out, they can survive, and if they can survive, they can cause damage to agriculture. So that's why they're banned.
Okay.
So here we don't have that issue, but that's why I said, for hatchlings and stuff, I'll never mess around with it. Like I said, all my hatchlings will always be fed rat pups. I'll always keep them on weans. I think ultimately what I would probably do is even holdbacks, I probably wouldn't switch them over till around 800 grams, because you never know. You could be midway through the season, one animal could be a holdback, and then you hatch something else 6 months later and you're like, oh, I don't need this anymore, I'm going to sell it. So you don't want to, you may not necessarily want to start your, like, it's different here in Canada and the US than it is in the UK and Europe. I think out your way, there's a lot of guys that prefer ASFs, and it's not something that, people turn away from. But here, there's a large portion of the community that demonizes them for, turning snakes into picky eaters, this and that. So rather than going back and forth with people and trying to convince them on otherwise, at the end of the day, I would say that's okay. Your hatchlings, your animals, they're on rats. All my stuff up to around 800 grams, we'll keep them on rats. If it ever gets sold, there's no issues. If I ever sold an animal as an ASF eater, I would always disclose it. I would never lie to anybody. I think it's very important to be transparent. But that would be like my way of approaching it. If there is anybody in your chat or listening to this podcast that are thinking of doing the same thing, I think it's important to just keep them on rats until a certain point and make a decision later to change them.
So over here, basically, obviously now ASFs are a lot easier to get hold of than, like, I've only been keeping snakes for like 5 years. So when I first got my first snake, there was nothing there. Like you say, if it was an ASF feeder a few years ago, it was a problem snake. But now I think it's getting to the point where, like I say, ASFs are quite easily to get hold of now. More people are converting their whole collection over to ASFs because there's a lot of people who say it's better for their collection. It's better that's their natural food. So people are converting their whole collection over.
Yeah, there's some people that, like, including big breeders. I've had a conversation with, I'm not going to mention any names, but a fairly large, extremely large breeder. And that individual completely dismissed the validity that ASFs are better for the animals. He said it's all anecdotal. There's no actual scientific data, blah, 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 blah. I actually tend to disagree with that. I actually do believe there is a benefit. And what's led me to believe that is I do have a few animals that I purchased as ASF only eating animals from another breeder. And, they eat far, far less. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, maybe 6 ASFs for an entire year. And I've gotten great clutches from them and all that stuff. But all of my rat eating animals, I've had to feed them like up to a dozen rodents, to get the same production from them. So it could be coincidence. I'm not saying that is proof in the pudding, but it could be coincidence. The other thing that's kind of led me to believe the truth in it is I actually had a little scare, and it was for no reason. So I don't know if you follow my Instagram, but I just dropped a clutch not long ago, leopard clown pied, to my Fire DYB Super Renchi pied. And she has always been a terrible eater from day one, from the day I got her. And I switched her over to ASFs early on because she was just never wanted rats. And even with ASFs and mice, she still wouldn't eat. And she was off food for about a year. Okay. Right. So I introduced the male into her. I wasn't expecting a clutch. I wasn't expecting anything from her. I just wanted to put the male in there and get a lock, hoping that it would stimulate her to kind of get into that feed mode, so she can put on some weight. So she took a couple of weeks off after the lock. She still didn't eat. And then finally she took an ASF. And then 4 weeks in a row, she took one ASF. She would never double eat. She would never do anything. Yep. She ate 4 ASFs. She wasn't even at 20 millimeter follicles yet. She stopped eating. She didn't eat again. She was thin. She was long. She was lanky. She didn't look like any female that I've ever seen in my collection that was going to drop a good clutch. This was the skinniest female I've ever seen. 4 ASFs in a year and 3 months. And I was afraid because a couple of my friends told me, you got to watch out because sometimes some of the snakes are a little stubborn and they'll still produce eggs, and they could be bad. They could be slugs. I was told they're most likely going to be slugs. Right. But they were like, even if they're not slugs, the condition of the female after she lays is what's going to be kind of scary, because if she doesn't have a lot of weight to begin with and she decides to go drop a clutch, then she could be really frail and lethargic afterwards, and that could be fatal if there's no intervention. So I was scared. I was like, oh my God, this is the first time I've ever seen a female this skinny. I was prepared for the worst. But man, not only did she drop a clutch, she gave me 6 massive eggs. I don't even know how she fit those eggs inside her. I don't know where they were. Honestly, I didn't even see them in her body. You could see her skeleton, her spine on the sides before she dropped a clutch. That's how skinny she was. 6 great eggs. She looks fine. She doesn't look lethargic. She has no issues after dropping the clutch. She ate an ASF the first 2 days after I pulled her off her clutch. No problem. And she's good to go.
Wow.
So my question is, again,
carry on.
I was just going to say, I don't have enough data behind me because, I haven't produced 300 clutches a year, 500 clutches. I don't know too much, but my question for anybody, that or maybe is, do you think that same female would have given me the same results and looked the same on 4 rats in a year and 3 months? That's the real question.
That's interesting. Yeah. But a lot of people would probably say no. But then you get the people who don't believe in the ASFs as much would probably say yes.
So I have 117 animals in my personal collection, and I would say probably about 13 or 14 of them are ASF only eaters. A couple of them have given me clutches already. And I can tell you just from the very small sample size that I'm working with, my ASF only females, they eat less throughout the year. They have great body conditioning. Like if you compare, I can always show on I should do one on a social media video. I could show them, but I have females, large females that are on ASFs only. And when you hold them in your hand compared to some of the rat eaters, their bodies are just stronger, they're thicker, they're more muscular. And these are animals that eat less than the rat eaters. They're not as fatty. I'm not saying they're all like that. I'm just saying I have some that are like that. So I'm starting to believe, just based on this clutch result that I just had, plus some of the females I do have, I'm starting to believe that there is truth to the fact that, contrary to what people believe, that you got to pound these ball pythons before breeding season. You got to get them as fat and thick as possible, and you need to give them so many rats. I don't think that's necessarily accurate. Again, I'm no expert. I'm not going to say I know better or not. I'm still learning. But what I will say is the animals that I've produced clutches from on ASFs, they look a little bit better body-wise, and they've given me good clutches off way, way less food. So I'm starting to believe that there might be some truth to the fact that just ASFs in general are better for the balls, better for production. And, another interesting comment that was made to me, the breeder, I don't want to mention breeder. I don't know if people like to be mentioned or not, but this is the last thing I'll say on it. Again, sorry if I talk too much. I'm a chatterbox, but one breeder said to me when I was asking him about the whole ASF thing, he said, the industry standard, the acceptable industry standard is that about 60 to 70% of your females will produce for you every year.
Yep.
And that individual breeder feeds exclusively ASFs. And he had only two females out of his entire collection that did not go this year. He's running like 95% plus production. And he said to me, he was like, he understands the whole, problems with some people getting ASFs. And if people can only feed rats, that's fine. And, but he was like, if you live in an area where you have access to them, where they are legal, he was like, why would you find it acceptable to run your business at 60 or 70% capacity when you could be running at 95%? Why not? Why not get more production out of less animals?
Yep.
So it was an interesting thing that was put in my mind, and I'm thinking hard about it. And like I said, right now my ASF production is just going to be for my picky stuff, but it might be something that we consider long term down the road, switching while it's still feeding rats to the hatchlings. But yeah, if you have any experiences, I love getting this feedback, because again, my experience is on a very, very small scale, but I would love to hear from people who do feed exclusively. Like, what are successes? How many clutches are you getting out of how many females? What's your ratio? How often are they going in? Are they going every year? I would love to see these comparisons from ASF only collections to rat only collections. And I would love to see if there truly is a big difference on a large scale. That's where we really need the data.
Yeah. And what Gav just said, data is king. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly.
You can't have too little data.
And what's funny is sorry to interrupt, but I have to say this: ASFs are very I don't know about you guys out there, but out here they're very demonized because people believe that you can't feed an ASF snake or rat. And I actually know that's factually incorrect, because I do have some females in my facility that I'll just feed them whatever I have that week, because over the winter I had a bit of a food shortage, so I gave them whatever I had. And I just think a good eater will eat anything regardless. I have good eaters that will take anything. I could throw a piece of chicken breast in there and they'll probably eat it. But I think from a lot of the conversations I've had with many breeders across the United States, like I've probably had this conversation with about 20 people now. And I think a lot of people are starting to become more aware of the whole ASF thing, and they're starting to see the results from the people who are feeding their collections ASF only. And I think they're becoming less demonized. And I do know one individual who's up here in Canada who secretly, I don't know if it's a secret, but he hasn't talked about it, but he's told me that last year he switched all of his proven breeders to ASFs. So he feeds rats to everything else, but he puts all of his proven breeders on ASFs. And in my mind, I'm like, why would you do that if you didn't believe, or if there wasn't any evidence to support the fact that ASFs were better? Why would you? ASFs are more expensive where we live. They're harder to get. They're harder to breed. Why would you go through that extra headache if there wasn't a reason for it? So it's just, I think there's more and more people are becoming aware, and I think more and more people are starting to, make adjustments in terms of their feeding. But it's an interesting topic. I support anybody what they want to feed. If you want to feed hamsters and gerbils, I support that too. I mean, I think whatever works for you, I think as long as the customer is aware of what you're feeding, and as long as the customer, like my customers, I would always ask anybody, like, I have if I ever did the switch, I would be like, okay, my animals are on ASS. I feed my hatchlings rats, but I will give you the option. Do you want me to start your hatchling on ASFs or rats? I think as long as the customer is taken care of, as long as they have the options available, and you can do whatever you want with your collection. And if there genuinely is data that supports the ASFs are better, which it seems that way, then I think it's people are going to start making the switch, and I think they're becoming less demonized. And I'm excited to kind of see how this plays out over the next couple of years in a lot of collections.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You think ASFs are expensive? Try feeding gerbils and hamsters on a weekly basis. Your bill will soon go up rather quickly.
Oh, I heard, because that was one thing. I bought a boa from an individual up here in Canada, and we were talking about this very topic, picky feeders, and he said sometimes he'll go out and buy a hamster or a gerbil for his picky ball python. I was like, I never even thought about that. I was like, but then my rodent supplier told me, like, breeding hamsters and gerbils, like they're not as productive. They're a pain in the butt. It's like, it's not something you want to mess around with. But some people have the motto, at the end of the day, no production means no eggs. No eggs means no money. No money means harder to support my business, harder to put food on the table, and harder to reinvest in more animals and everything. It affects everything. So some people have the mentality is, I don't care what they eat as long as they eat. Some people have that mentality. And I tend to agree with that mentality. I think it's just important. Whatever it is your animal wants to eat, whether it's a rat, mouse, ASF, gerbil, hamster, doesn't matter. As long as you, especially going into breeding season, if you can get calories in the animals and get clutches, then it's a whole domino effect. It brings a whole bunch of positive things to your business and to your collection. I think it's important.
So my collection, I've got about 30, and I think that there's probably 2 in my whole collection that wouldn't eat something they're not already eating. Like if I had something left over, something didn't eat, I could probably throw whatever it was left in 28 bins. Obviously, size, selection and whatnot taken into consideration. So yeah, I've like I said, I started breeding ASFs a long time ago, so a lot of mine were on ASFs, and I've never had an issue changing them back. And like if I've decided to let something go, I've said, like, would you, it's feeding on ASFs at the moment. I could change it back across if you want, and for like until it leaves on the courier run, I can just feed it rats if that's what you're feeding. I've never had an issue with that at all. Also with the hatchlings as well. You touched on it briefly, but what I do, I will offer a frozen forward as a first meal. If it doesn't take, then I will leave it probably 10 days and put a live ASF in. And, 99% of the time that works. And then go forward, I might put another live in as a second feed, but after that, it's frozen thawed all the way. I think over, especially in the States and Canada, I think it's easier to get hold of live than what it is over here in the UK. So most of ours, what we produce and what we sell, pretty much 99 to 100% of the time, it needs to kind of be on frozen forward. Whereas slightly different for you guys, I think. Am I right?
Yeah, we do have. It's a little bit different where I am now. Like we've had a couple of rodent suppliers just disappear off the face of the earth, decided that they no longer want to do it. And there's another guy who had some serious rodent quality control issues in terms of like, I don't know, like his rats and mice got mites and ticks and all kinds of things. And we just don't understand how that happened. And so he's no longer supplying a lot of people. So I would say there's like 2 or 3 main guys left that are producing good stuff. And you think about how many breeders of reptiles, plus the pet stores, plus we have the Toronto Zoo, we have all these businesses, in our province alone, really relying on like 3 guys to supply all of these rodents. And then you wonder why there's a shortage. They can only do so much. I mean, we don't have the luxury where I am of living next door like Justin in the States in Atlanta. He lives next to one of the largest rodent producers in the States. That guy, he brought me there, and that guy said he does 55,000 rats a week.
Wow.
That is unbelievable. And the most other mind-blowing thing about that is he told me it's 8 guys. How does 8 people manage that kind of an operation? I have no idea. That's even more impressive. But we don't have that luxury up here. The few guys that we do have, I mean, one guy is fairly large, but I mean, you know, you've got a building on your property. You can only do so much, and then of course, it's hard to find good work and good workers that want to come in and help. So, you know, like the guy that I get stuff from right now, I mean, he's a sole guy. He's doing everything by himself. He works long hours. I mean, it's a if you're the only guy supplying thousands of rats a week, that is a lot of work to do by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we do have a bit of an issue in terms of supply, and that's why we've just made a decision over here at my facility to say, you know what, let's get a building, let's set up some racks, let's start with ASFs, because I just right now my focus is on my picky animals. I want them to have consistent food going into next year, and then let's see how that goes. And we have the space. I mean, 35 feet by 15 feet. It's a pretty large space to work with. So we have lots of space to add more racks over time. And then, you know, if it gets to a point where it gets a little hard for me to manage, then I can start looking at maybe getting an employee and getting somebody to come in. At the end of the day, I'm not looking to be a rodent supplier. I'm not looking to make money from rodents. If I can pay somebody a decent wage that they can, you know, be happy with, pay for the bedding, the food, and have them all taken care of, and I break even and I have free rodents every week, I'm a happy guy. I'm a happy guy. So that would be like the ultimate goal long term.
Yeah. So let's get on to, I want to talk about the shows in Canada. Is it right in saying there's one main show in Canada?
Yeah, we have the CRBE, the Canadian Reptile Breeders Expo. It's every September. Unfortunately, because of COVID, the last 2 years it's been canceled.
Right.
So we haven't had a show.
Is there any hope for it this year?
From what I've heard, he's working on it. They're just trying to come up with restrictions and protocols in place. And if it did happen, it would be like 15% capacity or something like that. Like you would have a huge line, which again makes no sense to me. It makes no sense that you can have thousands of people lined up outside of a building, but only 5 people inside a huge store. Like it doesn't make any sense. But that's what they're trying to work on right now, and with the government trying to figure out how to make it happen. I'm not holding my breath. I do know the US shows are full steam ahead, and I decided to skip the Chicago show that's happening this weekend, just because when I go to Chicago, I like to drive. I want to bring my own vehicle so I can drive around and do my own thing.
Right.
So I would need to fly in right now, and then for me to fly back and then spend 4 days in a government-approved quarantine hotel, which I don't think is safe at all. I don't know how they think it's safe to stuff, you know, hundreds of travelers in a hotel together who could have COVID when you could just go to your own house and stay in your own house by yourself for 2 weeks. Like, I don't understand how that makes sense either. But they're skipping that show for that reason. Sorry, I think I moved my screen. But the next show is going to be, I think there's a Texas, there's a California show, and then there is another Chicago show all in the fall. And I'm 100% going to all 3 of them. I need to fly. I need to do some traveling. I miss all my friends in the States, and I miss going to shows and just talking about people's projects. And I'm going for sure.
So Chicago's Tinley, then is it Arlington?
And so there's the Anaheim convention. No, this year in the fall it's going to be in Anaheim, which is about 40 minutes southwest, I believe, of Los Angeles.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they just made a huge announcement. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you drive to Chicago, how long does that take?
For me, it's about, I drive like a maniac and really fast, so it should take me longer, but I usually make the trip in just under 6 hours.
Okay, that's not terrible. It's not terrible.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
So you're saying an announcement?
So the gentleman, Rami is his name, the guy who runs the California shows, San Diego, he runs the 2 California shows as well. He just announced that for 2022, he has just booked a venue to have the first show ever in Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
And I've never been to Las Vegas, and I've always wanted to go to Las Vegas, and now I have an excuse to go to Las Vegas.
Ah, man, if it wasn't bad enough going to a reptile show where you lose most of your money anyway,
Yeah.
you should do one in Vegas.
Exactly. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. Just imagine you go to a show and you're like, I want that, I don't know, double recessive, whatever, but I haven't got enough money. So let's just go all in on black, double your money and go back and get it, or
Exactly. It could work the other way though. You could drop, 10 grand on a craps table and then make it big and then come back and then buy all your dream animals. Like,
very true.
It could go either way.
Yeah. Damn, Matt. So do you vend any shows?
I probably won't ever vend a show just because demand has been so strong that I would never have any animals left over to take to a show to begin with. And the other side of the coin is, as much as it would be cool to vend a show, I kind of just like being free. I just like to walk around with my camera, talk to as many people, check out all the breeders' tables. When I say I go to a show, I go to a show. I don't just go to a show for a couple of hours and then disappear. Okay. Right. I'm at the show from open till close both days. And even if I've talked to everybody and then everybody's sick of me, I just stand in the middle of the floor and I just, I'll wave to people walking in, some new people. I like that social aspect of it. I like meeting people. I like talking to breeders. I like seeing their projects, because it's one thing to watch a YouTube video or see a picture, but when you actually see these animals in person, in your hand with these crazy colors, and you talk to the guy and just pick his brain on either his process in getting there and where he intends to go, and maybe you can pull ideas in your own. That is just so invaluable compared to you just get so much more information from a face-to-face interaction than you do from a video. So that's why I think the shows are so good, and I really enjoy being at them open to close when they're on. Yeah, and it gives people an opportunity to meet me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's the difference between our show. Basically, we have one show over here that's been running for a few years, Doncaster. Happens 4 times a year normally.
Is it a big show?
It's, like I say, it's the kind of the only one in the UK, so it's a fair size. To be fair, I've got nothing to compare it to. I haven't done the European ones like Ham or Houghton yet, so that's the only show I've been to. It's a fair size show, but that's only one day. Whereas, like you said, the shows in the US and Canada are 2 days, which sounds really cool. Like, you stay overnight and I guess throw back a few drinks in the evening and have a good time.
I'm kind of boring. Like I'm not a partier or a drinker. So what I end up doing is I just go out for dinner with everybody, and then everybody else goes out partying, and I go back to the hotel and go to sleep. Cause I'm just so tired, right?
Clear head for the morning. See?
Yeah, I want to be up at 7 o'clock the next morning, have my breakfast, spend a couple hours having a coffee. So by the time I do hit the show at 9 on the second day, I'm wide awake. I can start filming again and just get the camera going. And that's my mindset. My mindset, for me, the shows are so pivotal for me to get so much information, meet as many people as I can. For the personal stuff and the partying, like if I want to do that, it would be the day after the shows or the day before. Just when it's showtime for me, that is like my undivided attention to the show, to the people that are at the show, and to the animals, and just learn as much as I can. And that's why I spent so much time in the first 2 years when I got in 2018. It was a big part. That's why I quit my job in 2019. Is I still wasn't even producing then, but I flew to 13 shows in 2019, and my boss was kind of caught on. He was like, dude, like, where are you going all the time? What are you doing? Like, either you're here at work or you're doing your thing. You need to make a choice. And I said, okay, well, I'll see you later. Because I wanted to fly. And I also had expectations to go to Ham, because I was told that Ham is a really great experience. And unfortunately, COVID hit. Mm-hmm. The last trip I took was in February of 2020, and I went to Justin's facility for 2 weeks, and then me and Chase drove all of his animals down from Georgia to Texas, which was almost a 15-hour drive. Wow. And we did it in one shot. Chase still doesn't like me because he typically would drive and then, you know, for a few hours and stay at a hotel and do the rest of the second day. I was like, dude, let's just get there, man. Then it gives us all of Friday to get set up. We could have Justin's table and everything set up and done by, you know, noon on Friday. Then we got the whole rest of the day to go out with people and have dinners and this and that. So I kept pushing him and pushing him, and we just did it all in one shot. So that was the last trip I took. It was a blast. Justin is a great host. I mean, nicest guy ever. His family's amazing. His kids, his wife, they're so nice. And, you know, I was so excited coming home from that. And I was already looking at plans. I remember it vividly. I was already looking at plans to getting on the next flight and doing the next thing and booking my next trip. And I think it wasn't even 2 weeks I got back home and the first major organization shut down, and that was the NBA. The NBA, I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
They were the first major, at least here on this side of the pond, they were the first corporation ever to shut down everything. And then everybody else dropped like flies after that. And it was just, everything was over at that point.
Yeah, it was who was it? I stayed up to watch it. It was Dallas game, because I remember Mark Cuban with his phone in the front seat, like, showing everyone, and then you had Rudy Gobert touching all the cameras in the press conference.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a huge, because I had just quit my job in November, like a few months before, with the reasoning that I was going to spend 2020. I was going to go to Europe. I was going to go to the shows. I was going to go to all the US shows, because I didn't go to the San Diego one the year before. I was going to do the Toronto shows. I had plans to do it all. And it's just COVID hit. And it was like a kick in the gut. You know what I mean? And I didn't think it was going to last as long as it did. And unfortunately it did. And, you know, so we spent the last 2 years just focusing on the animals here. And, you know, we slowed down on the YouTube game because I just became a first-time father, and now I'm doing rodents, the reptiles, and I got so much work. I'm taking care of the property, the house too, all that stuff. Like, there's so much work on my plate for me to pull out a camera and film something right now. It's just, I just don't have there's not enough time in the day, right? So I'm hoping in the next few months things kind of normalize a bit, get back to a regular routine. You know, my daughter's approaching 4 months. She's a happy baby now. She's not a fussy crying baby all the time. So it's a bit easier. It's a bit easier on us. And I'm hoping that as the hatchlings start coming out for this year, that things are going to start to normalize. I hope that nothing happens again and all the shows in the States go on again. And I don't know what's going on with Germany, but I do hope that there's going to be something maybe in November again. I don't know if you've heard anything, but it would be great to go.
No, not off the top of my head. To be honest, I'm pretty much concentrating on the UK and the UK only at the minute. Like I run a events company, doing weddings and stuff like that. So that's been my focus, just to get stuff going again. Like, to be fair, I've been sat around for 16 months doing pretty much nothing. So yeah, that's sort of, like you say, it just sort of stopped you in your tracks, hit you in your gut. And like, I was making progress with my collection, and then just to have that all stop because I didn't have a living. Yeah, I had visions of where I wanted to be like now, and it just didn't happen because I didn't have the funds and whatnot to upgrade certain stuff at certain times. Like, I've still got animals where I'm, if COVID hadn't struck, I'd have definitely not had them in my collection anymore, because I'd have gone past sort of that point. But it is what it is, and there's nothing we can do about it, to be fair. So what I want to say is, I'm going to put you on the spot now. For someone like me, I've never been to those to Canada. What's the best one?
Sorry, you cut out
if
there.
If I was to come across
yep.
to the States or Canada, what is the best show? Which, if I only could do one, which show would you tell me to do?
So it depends what you're looking for. So my two favorite shows are the Tinley show and the California shows. Okay. But they're very different. So the California show is hands down, at least it was. I don't know how the landscape's going to be going forward, but for the first 2 years that I was involved in ball pythons, the California show was the largest in terms of mass. Okay. Mm-hmm. It was like, we're talking 100,000 people a day going to this place. We're talking aircraft hangar size, 1,000 booths. Like, it was just monstrous show. It was huge. if you have the ability to go to the California show, there's a lot of positives, not just from the show, but it's California, so if you wanted to spend a couple extra days, the show is not far from the Santa Monica Pier. That's a very famous location. There's all the great restaurants in Los Angeles. There's some things you can do that are really great in California. So I would definitely put that on the bucket list. But so that show is great for that. Also, the California show has some of the nice, I have a few friends out in California, Porter's Pythons, Adams Reptiles. The other guy, I always forget, he's going to slap me because I always forget his name, but they all hang out at the booth together, and they're the nicest people. They take good care of me while I'm out there. They host me. So really nice people. The Tinley show is a little bit smaller in foot. It's still massive. But it's smaller in footprint, but that's like going to a car show versus going to an exotic car show. Right. The Tinley show, every breeder makes effort and makes sure that they go there. So you're not missing out on any breeder. All the breeders that go there, they bring all of their top end projects, all of their most amazing animals. Sometimes they bring secret stuff that you've never seen before, new genes. That's where you go to see, the future of the hobby. That's where the amount of information that you get from a Tinley show is just insane. The Pomona one is fun. It's fantastic. The Tinley one is more like, okay, bring your notebook and bring a lot of money. Because you're not leaving there without at least one animal. Because if you don't get that animal there, you may never see that animal again for the next 5 years. Okay. So and in Chicago, you got deep dish pizza. You've got some great sites.
Yeah. So my last trip was to Chicago. So
it's a great time.
Yeah, we had fun. So basically, I had a family reunion in New Jersey. So my brother lives in New Zealand. So we met in Chicago, and then we drove from Chicago to New Jersey, stopping at certain destinations on the way through. So it was a really cool trip. But we spent like 4 days in Chicago, which it was really nice. But then we left Chicago. We went to end up in Cleveland. I really enjoy Cleveland. And then we stopped off somewhere else. I can't even remember where we stopped off. Like, that was a heavy night. But
does your passport allow you to fly freely into the States, or do you have to apply for the travel visa for that?
So I had to apply for something. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't remember what it was. It cost me like £15. But it was
probably a travel visa.
So yeah. Basically, it was valid up to like 2 years.
Yeah.
So I only had to do it once in 2 years, and basically go where I wanted. But no, that was the last trip I took. So sort of, you're saying like the Tinley show, sort of the all-star game.
If I also wanted to mention Arlington, because those are the big three shows that you don't want to miss. Arlington, the Tinley, Arlington, the Texas people are the nice people too. You eat great food.
Yeah.
Some of the best barbecue joints you'll ever see. Texas was a lot of fun, a lot of great animals there too. But if I only was able to go to one show and that's it, Tinley would be the priority, hands down. Yeah.
Okay. Right. As soon as the borders are open, I'm booking a ticket.
There you go.
Absolutely. Yeah. To be fair, I want to do as many of them as possible anyway. I eventually, in a few years, I probably will do them all. But it just sucks. We can't make any plans or anything at the minute. So, but everyone's in the same boat, and like you say, as soon as it gets back to normal, then everyone be a lot happier.
Exactly.
So you did mention it. You quit your job when did you say?
It was the end of 2019. So I think it was the first week of December.
All right. So what did you do before?
I was a sales manager at a dealership.
So, selling cars, right?
Yeah. So I initially was a sales manager. I've been a sales manager for 4 different dealerships over the course of my career, seven years. And then halfway through 2019, I actually ended up downgrading myself to sales. And the reason why I did that is because I wasn't able to do sales management. I mean, a sales manager has to be in the dealership 6 days a week, managing the team, doing numbers. And with the amount of traveling I was doing, it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so because my focus started becoming elsewhere, it was mutual. I ended up leaving the dealership that I was at. I moved to a new store, and I didn't apply for management. I just went in there as sales because I just wanted to, when you're a sales guy, you have more flexibility. You're not paid a salary. You're not paid anything. You're only commission. So if you're not at the dealership, they're not paying you because you're not selling anything. So
yeah. I suppose if you're a sales manager, you have to kind of take part of that job home with you. Whereas
you do,
sort of leave it at the door.
Yeah, and I never expected to transition. I mean, I never really had the intentions on going full time. I mean, I enjoyed my job. I enjoyed what I was doing. But then, I started making my first sales at the end of the summer in 2019 off my first production. A little bit of money started coming in, and I just started realizing, okay, and then I started booking all these shows, and I was like, if I really want to make a business out of this, then how successful can I be if I just put in a little bit of my time? If my time is focused on the dealership network, then I may not necessarily be able to push the envelope as far as I want to push it. And I love what I do. I love the snakes. I love this industry. It sucks that our industry is always under attack from, animal rights activists and politicians who don't know anything, always trying to shut us down. It really sucks that we're always under attack. And there are certain arguments that some of them make about that are valid that I can understand why. For example, if you don't own reptiles and you look at a guy with racks with a bunch of snake stuff in what they call quote unquote drawers, I understand where the perception can be a little bit off. I'm not one of those guys that's just going to come out with my pitchfork and just flame. I always try to look at people's arguments objectively. And then if there's an opportunity for education, both from me or from them, then I'd rather approach it that way. But at the end of the day, I love what I do, and I really wanted to focus on this, and it was impacting my work. I've always been a really good salesperson. I would average 20 plus cars a month. And then I remember November was my last selling month, and I sold 2 cars. I have never sold less than 15 cars since the first day I got into the business. Okay. Even as a sales manager, I was selling more because I was helping the sales staff. That's how checked out I was from my job because
you weren't in it anymore.
Yeah, I just wasn't in it. I would sit at my desk all day, and I had my computer open, and instead of working on my customer retention and calling people, I had Morph Market open. I had my YouTube channel open. I was secretly editing some of my videos at work. They were starting to catch on. And it finally I got pulled into the boss's office on the first week of December, and he didn't want me to go. He said to me, he's like, because he figured out what I was doing. And I remember the conversation vividly. And he gave me a sales pitch about how you're never going to be as successful doing anything else other than this. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, okay. That's not true. But he gave me the ultimatum. He looked at me and he said, if you want to be a real man, and if you want to make a lot of money, then you need to give aside all this zoo stuff. He called it like zoos. He's like, if you want to have giraffes and elephants and all this stuff on your personal time, that's fine. But if you want to be a real man and make real money, then your focus needs to be here. And we want you here because we know you can do it. We know you're good at it.
Right.
He's like, if you can't do that, then you need to remove yourself from the situation. I looked right in his eyes and I said, I appreciate where you're coming from, but I believe in myself. I believe in my business. And I've learned a lot in the car business in terms of how to treat people, how to take care of customers, how to, diffuse bad situations. Because no matter how good we are, how hard we try, we're not going to be able to please everybody, right? So you've got to be able to manage that as well. And I've learned a lot of things from that career that I was able to apply. And I told myself, I said, this is it. This is a pivotal part in my life where I need to make a decision. Do I continue down the path where I am, where I'm not necessarily enjoying what I'm doing? I'm just doing it because it pays the bills and provides me with a lifestyle that I'm happy with. Or do I want to take a risk and just try something new and push the envelope? And I don't know how it's going to turn out. And I chose to take the risk. And so far it's worked out really well for me. And I have all my amazing customers to thank for that. I genuinely believe that I have some of the best customers in this business, really understanding people. This is how crazy it was. Our first lockdown, I had already sold 4 snakes. These were the last 4 snakes that I had in 2019, and they were supposed to be shipped out. unfortunately, that was the first wave lockdown came in at the beginning of 2020, and it shut. This was before they allowed like anything. There was this complete border shutdown. I had these 4 snakes in my possession for a year.
Wow.
Before I was able to ship them out. Neither one of those 4 customers ever bothered me, ever pressured me, ever called me, ever demanded their money back. They were, all 4 of them were like, dude, we understand it's COVID. Take your time. We know they're in good hands. And one guy was even like, it's okay, man. I prefer you to do all the work, and I just get it when it's a breeder anyways.
It's 1,000 grams. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they were such great people, so understanding, and it just made everything so fun for me. And I couldn't do it without those types of people, and I appreciate it all the way. So I'm happy I made the decision. And I think, you know, if there's anybody out there that wants to do this full time, and you know, I can't say that because my success is still yet to be seen. I've only been 3 years into it. You know, I don't consider success until like the 5-10 year. Like anybody can buy like anybody can do what I did. Anybody can go out, buy a bunch of snakes, reproduce some cutting edge projects. But in order to maintain the business, you have to continuously be able to be creative and push the envelope. And I still don't even know if I'm going to be successful at doing that, because I'm still, you know, reproducing some of the stuff that's already been out there. I'm slowly working on building my own projects, but that takes time. Mm-hmm. But I think the message here is, don't be afraid to take the risks if you have the ability to take the risks, because I think most successful people in this world that have made it big time, like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all these guys, these are the guys who, you know, I don't know, you guys watch Dragon's Den. You guys have Dragon's Den out there, right? And Shark Tank and all that stuff. Yep. You know, it's not uncommon to hear about people, you know, wanting to start businesses. They move back in their parents' houses. They sell their homes. Like, some people really put it all on the line and risk, and it's not always going to pay off, but usually the most successful people are the ones who did that. And I just think if you are afraid to, I don't know how it is in the UK, but in Canada and the US, the ball python market is really strong. There's a huge demand. There's huge potential here. It just requires some investment. And if you can get over that hurdle and the fear of the investing part, it's a legitimate business, and many people can be very successful at it. And I encourage it 100%. It's worked for me so far, and it's been fun. And I want everybody to succeed, and I want everybody to have the same positive results. Just don't be afraid is what I'm trying to say. You know, be smart about it.
Yeah.
You know, don't go mortgage your house tomorrow and buy a bunch of animals without even putting a business model together. But if you're smart about it, then I encourage everybody for sure.
Yeah, I can see people going back to their missus and go, right, we've got to sell the house. I heard this podcast. This guy from Canada, like we're selling the house, and I'm buying like this snake, this. Yeah, you got to be smart about it. You know, you got to find your level, I think, of this hobby. You can jump in too fast and too quick and get caught out quick. You just got to find where you're at, which obviously, like you say, you put a fair bit of capital into your business to get started. It's no secret.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid to talk about it, because it's, you know, I hope that it inspires other people. I think it's important before you make any of these huge decisions. Like, I didn't just wake up one day and just, you know, started buying. I had great mentorship. I mean, I was on the phone with Justin, you know, probably almost every other day. Like, he was a good mentor for me. And I think it's important for anybody to before you just, you know, take out $100,000 or mortgage your home, or before you do any of these crazy big life moves, I think it's important, align yourself with somebody who has a proven track record, a proven success, and a proven model that works. Mm-hmm. Get as much mentorship as you can, get as much information, get as much you know, support, and then start making those moves, start acquiring your animals, start putting together a business plan. And I made some mistakes. And one of the biggest mistakes I made was setting too high of expectations. You know, I remember when I first got into it, I was like, you know, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I want to be by year 3, this and that. And we're on year 3 now, and I'm still like, you know, I'm going to have maybe 12 clutches this year. I have 117 animals, but I'm still only making 12 clutches. So be patient. It takes time. You know, you might buy an animal tomorrow that is an amazing eater, but it could turn the dime on you at any point in time. It could reach 800 grams and stop eating you for 2 years, right? It could happen. And I just think it's important for everybody to don't do what I did, like set realistic expectations. Don't put yourself in a position where you've mortgaged your future on the snakes so heavily that in downtimes like today with the COVID, or if we have a down market or whatever, you are in a pinch financially. Now you have to start selling off key animals that you otherwise should be keeping. You don't want to be in a position where you have to make these bad decisions, right? So put yourself in a good position where you're able to weather any storm that's thrown at you, have good mentorship, and the rest, focus on the animals, focus on the quality. Money aside, I think money should always be secondary. If you put in time and energy in your collection into quality and producing good animals, and that's your focus and your customers are your focus, then the money is just something that's going to follow naturally. But if your focus is solely on the money first, like I've heard of people wanting to jump out so fast that they'll literally go out and buy, 18, 20 proven breeders from a guy, could be normals, could be just whatever. And just like, oh yeah, I'll just go buy male, just producing, and guess what? There's no history on those proven breeders. You don't know how many clutches they've had. You don't know how old they are. You don't know if they go every year. You don't know how many times they've slugged out. You don't know if they're good eaters. You don't have any of this information. And then you got a guy, I know one guy who did this. He bought all these animals. It turned out really negative for him. And then he got depressed because he didn't get the results out of them. And then he ended up just selling them all off and then decided he doesn't want to do it anymore and took a loss.
Yeah.
So
them sort of people are not meant for this industry. I don't think this hobby. To be fair, I've not heard of that sort of story over here or anything like that. I guess maybe I haven't been in it long enough to actually, I think now people are getting a bit more
educated.
It's still a hobby, but it's kind of like turning into a bit of a profession as well. There's a hobby and then there's the industry sort of thing where I think people are taking themselves a lot more professional, rather than just, like you say, people trying to get a load of proven females and just chuck them one male at like 20 females and see how you get on, and just, sort of the cash cow sort of way of doing things, where I think, people who are taking this seriously, obviously you think about, what you want to make. You're not thinking about, oh, how much, if I put this one and this one together, all the outcomes, how much could I possibly make out of this one? And, that's where the real breeders and the lovers of this hobby as well, where,
absolutely,
people who go out and just try to make money, they don't really care about the animals either, where 90% of the people who keep these animals love these animals. Even if they couldn't breed them, they'd still have these animals.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not if that's not you, then maybe you shouldn't really be doing this at all.
So I don't think there's anything wrong. Like if you've got a working Joe who works 5 days a week, 6 days a week, full time, he's got a family, he's got kids, and he just wants to make a little bit of side income, and he genuinely enjoys the animals, I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I know personally a guy here in Canada who has amazing animals. He's got a very small collection, but he doesn't even advertise. He doesn't sell to the public. He just wholesales a couple of boxes a year. He makes about $40,000 or $50,000 off a bunch of wholesale boxes. And these are animals that he's producing that he could make a lot more just by selling direct to consumer. But his whole motto is, I love my animals. I love my snakes. It's my hobby on the side. I work full time. I just want to ship out a couple of boxes to Indonesia or to the Asias, get an extra 40 or 50 grand a year in my pocket. It keeps my wife happy, keeps my kid. I can put my kids through school. I can provide them with the lifestyle that they deserve. I can be happy because I'm enjoying my hobby. I would rather have a hobby like that than say, some guys who like to soup up cars and race them on the weekends and burn thousands of dollars in tires and parts and equipment. That doesn't pay you any money. That just sucks you dry, right? So
I've never
I don't think I don't think there's anything wrong with that mindset. I just think it's important to focus. Like I know him personally. I've seen his collection. It's super clean. He takes care of his animals. If you're a guy and you have the passion and you just want to make a little bit of money on the side while enjoying a really fun, cool hobby and go to shows and meet some people, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. Don't think that, it's either you're a pet guy or a big business. Like you don't have to want to set up a business and be a full-time breeder. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If my back door opened, hang on, I gotta close it. There we go.
Yeah, let's not get confused. People join this hobby because they know there is money in this hobby, but like I say, if that's not your first priority, then at the end of the day, most breeders will make money. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Something else I want to talk about quickly. Am I right in saying your first animals came from Billy?
Yeah, my first 3 or 4 snakes I ever bought were from Mutation Creation. Yeah.
The story goes you wanted a certain animal, and he said, "How about you get these animals instead?" Or explain, like people who don't know, can you explain the story?
Yeah, so I was heavily passionate about reptiles my whole life. I'll give you a quick backstory. So
that'd be great. That'd be great.
My entire teenage life, I've had stupid things too. I mean, this was back in the day when there was pet stores in my area selling Nile monitors as pets, and if you could be some 10-year-old kid, if you got $100 in your wallet and you pull it out cash, and you're walking home with a Nile monitor, right? Like that's how silly it was. So I've had a Nile monitor. I've had an African rock python. I've had a couple of boas. I've had a what was it? Pine snake. It's the same family as gopher snakes.
Right. Okay.
So I've had a pine snake. I've had a Mexican black king snake, and my favorite reptile growing up was a chameleon. He actually lived for 7 years, and apparently that's their lifespan. He ended up developing a tumor on his side. He ended up passing away after about 7.5 years. But he lived a long, happy life. And I used to go in my backyard and catch crickets and grasshoppers and feed him and that kind of stuff because I was just a kid. I couldn't afford to buy food at the pet store. So in the summer, I was going out and catching my food, right?
Yeah.
So I used to follow ball pythons. My first ball pythons I got in my late teens. It was a pastel and a normal from a show. And I used to go to the shows and just have fun. And then my career started to take off, approaching my 20s. I went to school. And then I was career oriented and focused. And all of this took a back burner. And then once life got settled, I remember I was 28, 29. I went to my first show again after so many years of not going. And I ended up, I didn't follow the ball python market during that time that I was away from reptiles in my 20s. So I had no idea that stuff like dreamsicles existed, that you could make an orange snake or a purple snake. I didn't even know that was a thing. So I went to the show with my girlfriend, and I went to Billy's table, and I saw this dreamsicle on the table, and I was like, what in the world is this? I have never seen anything like this. What the heck? And I tried to buy it right there. I was like, I just want this thing. And he refused to sell it to me because he said, quote unquote, I wasn't ready, right? So I appreciate that from him because he could have just taken my money and, cashed out, washed his hands, and be like, woo, great. Yeah. And he chose not to do that, which is very honorable of him to do. And then he invited me to his facility at the time, and I ended up going to his facility a couple of weeks later. And then, I spent a lot of time in his facility. I went back and forth, bought a couple of snakes from him. I bought a 1,200 gram clown that he sold me and a 1,100 gram banana clown. I bought those 2 animals. And this was this was the first couple of months. I had no intentions on, I didn't even know anything about business. I didn't even, that wasn't even in my mind at that time. I didn't even know you could make a business out of snakes. The very concept on paper at that time just seemed completely ludicrous to me. It made no sense. I didn't know about Justin. I didn't know about Miguel. I didn't know any of these guys. I didn't know any of their YouTube channels. I didn't know any of this stuff at this time. I just bought these 2 snakes, and then I started discovering because I started researching. I was like, hey, it's really cool. So then I started watching more videos. I discovered Justin's channel. I saw all the clown stuff he was making. And I started discovering Miguel and all these other things. And I decided at that point I wanted to just breed a few animals and have some fun with it. So I went out and bought a Batman. And that was my first major purchase from JKR, was a Batman. It was the most expensive snake I bought up until that point. It was very scary. I felt sick to my stomach a couple of days later because I couldn't believe what I had just done. And that's how the whole thing started, and it just spiraled out of there. But the whole thing started from seeing a dreamsicle. After so many years of never been to a show, I saw this dreamsicle, and I was just like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah. So so you said you had two in your teens. You had a pastel and normal, did you say?
Yeah, this is like my early 20s. I remember I some breeder sold me I forget who it was. I think he's still around, but it was like back in the day, it was like this pastel was like $1,000.
Yeah.
And the normal was like 500. And
what year was this roughly?
I think I was like 20 years old at the time. I was still in college. So yeah, I was around when I was 20. That's 14 years ago.
Wow. Do you ever think, if I'd have kept that and just like kept that ticket over, you'd because obviously back then, I'm guessing like pastels, like you say, were still quite a bit of money.
People don't know my backstory, and I love talking about it because it's funny to look back at. But those two snakes got me kicked out of my dad's house.
Oh, damn!
Yeah, that's how my passion for reptiles was so strong that I was willing to risk it. What happened was, I had moved because I didn't live in the city. I was born in Toronto, but I lived with my mom, and she was always a country girl, so we lived in the country. Mm-hmm. And when I finished high school, my dad lived in Toronto, and he offered me to come stay with him so I could go to school. Yeah. So I did. I assumed that the same week that I graduated high school, I moved to my dad's place in Toronto and applied to college and went to school right away. So I was living in his basement, and he was with his now partner. They're not married, but they've been together for 15 years. And she hates like animals, not just snakes. Like she just hates animals. I can't even have a fish in a jar. Okay. Yeah, just absolutely just hates. Well, she's Filipino. I don't know if that's just the thing or if they're all like that, but I know her and her family. They're like, they just hate animals. So I went to the show. I bought this pastel that's normal, and I was just like, I thought I was going to be smart. I was like, okay, they never come down to the basement. I lived there by myself. I bought these little tanks, and I set them up, and I put them behind a wall unit, kind of hid them. But I was stupid at the time. There's a little heat lamp. You could still see the light, and the laundry room machine was downstairs.
Right.
So long story short, she ended up discovering them one day when I was at school, and I came back, and she just said, she told my dad it was either him or me. So I got kicked out, and I had to move to my grandparents' house, and I lived with my grandparents, his parents, for the remainder of my school time. And up until when I bought my first place, I lived with them for 10 years because I didn't want to leave the city. I didn't want to go back to my mom's place. I wanted to stay in Toronto. I wanted to start my life in the city. And she hated me for that experience. So I'm just telling the story because my passion for the reptiles and snakes literally got me kicked out of my house in my early 20s. And it's so funny to look back at that. And it's so funny because I moved away from all this reptile stuff. I started a career. I was working towards, my personal goals. And, it's funny how sometimes you naturally find your way back to your initial passions growing up. And that's the best part about it. I found my way back to the snakes and developed what it is today. And you asked me 5 years from, ago, if I ever dreamed of this happening, and I would have said, you're absolutely crazy. So it's just fascinating to know that the same snakes that is today is putting food on my table are the same snakes that got me kicked out of my house 10 years before that.
That's crazy. That's absolutely mad. So, mind you, you say 5 years ago, like 5 years ago, I was just getting started with my first snake. I bought my first snake because I was scared of snakes. So I bought a corn snake. And then within 2 hours, I was like, I need something bigger. So like,
I think we've all done that. We've all started with because we were told in pet stores, like, oh yeah, you want to start with the corn snake. This is like an experienced snake. They get bigger, they get larger. You don't want to start with that. And it's like, it's the same thing my mom did to me when I was growing up as a kid. I wanted my first pet because a kid I don't know if you guys have those in your schools, but you have pet days where people bring their pets to school. We had this.
Get more certain days, yeah.
Yeah, so in middle school we had that like pet days, and I remember this one kid brought to my classroom a green anole in a little like jar. And he wanted to show everybody his green anole, his little lizard. And I was like, oh my God, it's so cool. So I went to my mom and I was like, Mom, I want a lizard so bad. Like, please let me get it. And she was like, well, first you have to prove to me that you are responsible and you can take care of an animal if you're going to get a lizard. So she goes out and buys me a hamster. And she's like, you need to take care of this hamster for a year and show me that you can take care of it. And in my mind, I'm like, that is the worst thing you could do. I don't like hamsters. I don't want a hamster. How is me taking care of something I hate that I never want to touch going to prove my ability to take care of something I am going to like and I am going to be passionate about? You know what I mean? So I had to take care of this stupid hamster. I hated the thing. They're nocturnal. I had to keep the cage in my room. It had a little wheel on it. They spin all night and it makes noise. I couldn't sleep. And I just hated that thing. And I was just, all I wanted was a green anole, you know? So I'm just, all these little, these funny little stories growing up about, you know, these reptiles. And it's been engraved in my blood, man, since I was a kid.
That's crazy. That's so funny. Yeah. So yeah, I bought a corn snake because I was scared of snakes. And this thing was like a shoelace. It wasn't very old. It was like, I don't know, 6 months old. And I couldn't even pick it up properly. I had to wait for it to sliver out of the cage and sort of like get halfway down the back of the drawers before I'd pick it up, because I knew its head was out of sight. And then I'd pick it up and it'd be fine. But then I sort of got used to it. And like you say, I needed something bigger. So it took, like, at the time I was with my wife, like, it took a little while to convince her to let me get something bigger. When I said something bigger, she must have thought I meant like a green anaconda or something like that. Like, she like shut it down for so long, probably like 9 months. Literally, I just asked her the right time. I literally asked her on my birthday, and that's the only time she said yes, I could get like a ball python. And sort of, yeah, as soon as I got one ball python, it was like most people get one, and it just turns into a bit of an addiction. And it was just off to the races from there. But I kind of like how I did it, because a lot of people, like you say, there's some people go about this completely the wrong way. Whereas I bought a male ball python, which was, you know, probably like 8 to 10 weeks old. I grew that up to full size, and then I went and bought a female and watched that grow up to full size. And then I paired them together once and got eggs I wasn't expecting. So yeah, I kind of did it.
That's a long way to do it.
Really, yeah, exactly. Yes, but it taught me to, you know, read your animals and all the little things. Who, you know, you go out and buy male and female ready to breed. You don't know why is this not eating? Why is she acting like this? Why is he gone off food for 6 months? And
that's the problem with some people's mentality, especially those that are trying to cut the corners. And just because, you know, I'm not saying what I did is smart either. I mean, I had this discussion with Miguel not long ago where it was like, I just couldn't. I asked him, I said, what are you doing, man? Like, we literally came on scene around the same time, and you are producing 30, 40 clutches, and I'm still struggling to pump out 10. You know what I mean? But we've been in it around the same time. So my strategy was to buy all hatchlings, start out from the ground and buy all hatchlings. Right. Miguel bought a lot of hatchlings, but he also bought a lot of older animals that had size. And it's worked a lot better for him because he's gotten more clutches and he's been able to push his projects a bit better. So I think there's nothing wrong. I think buying nothing but proven adults is a bad strategy coming into it, because again, most new people, including myself, I didn't know, like when I bought my first 2 proven breeders, you don't know the questions to ask. You don't know what to ask the breeders, you know, and a lot of breeders don't track all that information in terms of productivity and age and all that stuff. So it's hard to get that information. But if you have all the patience in the world and you want to do it like I do, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if I had to do it all over again, that's one thing I would have changed. Maybe less, like I still would have bought a lot of hatchlings and just grown stuff up, but I might have mixed and matched a few more older females or some stuff, just because sometimes it's not just about getting clutches, it's pushing projects. You know what I mean? You want to get, it would have been nice to be able to produce some key animals that I bought that I could have easily produced on my own to breed back to my good stuff that I was growing up. It would have been nice to be able to do a little bit more of that. So I think that would be the only thing I would have changed going back, is maybe just instead of all hatchlings, maybe like 80% hatchlings, but picked up some great breeders and some good stuff in between. And that way, you know, if those breeders turn out bad, well, it's not going to kill your whole business because you still have all your stuff that you're growing up, you know. So maybe a little bit of a combination of both is a great way to get started.
Yeah. So you say you're expecting 12 clutches this year?
Yeah, I could have done a lot more, but again, we had some major food shortage issues over the winter. So that's probably right now, confidently, all I can say is 8 that I know for sure. But I'm my other 4 females that I'm thinking are going to go. They're still around that. They're approaching 20 millimeters now. It's getting late, but I there might be some progress there. So we'll see. We'll see. But next year is going to be a monstrous year. Monstrous. Yeah.
Mind you, you say that, but like most of your clutches have at least got like at least one's world first in. From what I see on Instagram, it's just nuts. And you post these pictures of these animals, and like you say, it's only your 3rd season. It's just mind blowing. Like what you're doing. I
appreciate that. Thank you.
It's just absolutely unbelievable. And like you say, you and Miguel jumped in at sort of the same time, and you're both like the combos you're both doing. It's just like sometimes I watch in awe, and like sometimes I'm just like, I want to give up. Look at this.
No.
Look never. At this thing. But no. I don't think I'd ever. I think I'm like till I drop. I think I'll have ball pythons in my life, 100%, guaranteed. But no, so what was your first clutch this season? That one had a world first in it, right?
Yeah, this year my first clutch was a Dream Skull Het Clown female, and she was bred to my Pompeii male, which is a black pastel, red stripe, yellow belly, spot nose clown.
Yeah.
So I had 2 options there. I talked about this on a previous podcast too, and this is when I tell people, again, money is secondary, and the reason why I say that is because I have an Orange Dream Skull male. Okay, I could have. And I considered it. I considered putting my Orange Dream Skull male to the Dream Skull female and making an entire clutch of dreams. And financially, it would have been great, right? Because I wouldn't have kept anything. I would have sold it. But I really, really love the Lavender Clown project. I have a Grail on the shelf. She's around 1,500 grams now. She's ready to breed for next year. So I was more concerned with, furthering along my project and hoping to hit any clown, even if it was just a clown, some clown combo that I could run back a male to her. It was a risk because not only do I have to hit odds on getting genes and a visual clown, het lavender, but I also have to worry about whether it's going to be male or female. So I really threw all my chips in there, and I was like, let's hope for the best. And it paid off. I got the male that I wanted. It was everything except black pastel. It was almost a Pompeii. It's double het lavender pied. I think it's a world's first. I've never seen. A lot of people have made spot nose, red stripe, yellow belly clowns, but I've never seen one that's double het lavender and pied either. Yeah. And that's a male, and I hit it. Everything else in the clutch wasn't necessarily the greatest. I mean, there's not a lot of value there in terms of the rest of the clutch, but that one animal, even though. Yeah, that one animal is going to set me up for my future and my project. And that was more important to me than just the initial financial results.
Did you produce the Pompeii or did you bring it in?
No, so I bought that one from Justin. That was the second one he's ever, I think he's produced 3 in total. He has the original male that was used to father the one that I have.
Yep.
And then he's never made a video about it, but he just posted on Instagram the other day. He made a fire Pompeii, I think last year, and it was breeding for him this year. And to our knowledge, those are the only 3 that exists in the world right now.
Yeah, to our knowledge. Yep.
To our knowledge.
You haven't been to his facility in a while, so God knows what he's got in there.
Yeah, it was shocking. The last time I was at his facility, sometimes he just walks away and he lets you do your thing, and you're just walking around the aisles and looking at bins, and you're like, "Whoa, I didn't know you had this. Oh, you have this too? What? Oh my God, you never show this stuff." Like, it's mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing.
See, that was a question I was going to ask. Like, when you go to Justin's, does he let you just go like full in, just help yourself, have a look at anything you want?
Oh yeah, with me it was like, the world is your playground. Do whatever you want. So I just spent the day, going through tubs, looking at colors and trying to learn. There's certain genetics I still have a hard time identifying, so I use that opportunity to look at multiple examples, because that's the thing. Like, experienced breeders, they have that over anybody like me, or you, or any newer people, is they have the experience of knowing, base forms. They know what a yellow belly clown looks like. They know what yellow belly and red stripe do to clown, because they've watched the progression of gene stacking through multiple generations, and they start to understand. We don't have that. I put my next clutch is due to hatch, Pompeii to banana clown, but I've never seen a banana Pompeii. He has, but I haven't.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just so much easier to identify stuff when you have all those years of experience. And that's why I feel so grateful that I have the great mentorship and the support to help identify some of those harder combos.
Yeah, that's part of the fun of this, and it could be, I don't want to say a negative, but it can be tough sometimes. Like, when I have a clutch, 10 days away from maybe pipping or something, I'll go onto the internet and see what combos I could produce and what they look like. But they, a lot of them look so much different in the egg, and it's not until you've produced these in the egg that you can actually identify them in the egg. And
exactly,
it's
you've
tough.
also got polymorphism too, right? Like not all clowns look the same. Not all yellow belly clowns are the same.
Yeah.
A lot of times people will be like, okay, well, I don't know if this has yellow belly, so let me go look on Morph Market. Well, it looks different than these two, so it's got to be. That may not necessarily be true because there is a bit of polymorphism. Not every combo together looks identical to each other. There's a lot of genes out there that have different names that are actually the same genes, but they're named differently because at first people thought that the slight differences in variation in the pattern and color would warrant it being a totally different gene when it wasn't. So and then, like you said, that's the fun. That's the fun is, I have several animals that I held back from last year that are growing up in my rack, and each one of them are labeled possible this, possible that, because I just don't know. And it's going to be so much fun to kind of slap these animals back to other snakes and just see, if my initial assessments were right. Because these are, the more basic stuff is pretty easy to identify, but when you start working with 4 or 5 gene stacking and you're the only person that's made them and everything is theoretical at that point, that's when it really becomes fun, because you really get to kind of just see how it interacts and, and hopefully prove it out later on.
Yeah. And especially if you've put POS and you think it is, and then you breed it and it does produce, you sort of like give yourself a little pat on the back.
Yeah, you're like, I did it. I did a good job. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I knew it all along.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've got some one more thing. So Justin hasn't got any like tubs with like question marks and locks on, no?
No, I mean, there was a few things I saw that he asked me not to share. Like there are some certain projects that, and I have no problems with that. I mean, I think anybody who's put in the time, I mean, you look at his Suma project, like you said, I don't know if you've ever watched his original video with the Suma Pied, but it took him 8 years to hit the odds and over 52 babies, right? So sometimes it takes a lot of work, a lot of time, and people like that who put in the time and the work and they deserve to work on their projects. And sometimes it's not even about being a secret. It's just about like, I want examples. I want to be able to confidently say that this is what happens with this is what happens that. I need multiple animals over multiple generations to prove that out to show. So there are some things there that were there that I saw that, there are question marks even in his mind that he wants to tinker around with and play with first. And I'm doing the same thing. I've got a couple animals that I haven't really talked about much on my social media because I'm, tinkering a little bit as well. And, I don't think there should be a rush to put stuff out there. I think I would rather somebody put out a video saying, check this gene or this new project out. Here are 10 examples with that gene in it. Now versus somebody coming and saying, here's a brand new project. I got nothing to show, but you should believe in it and pay me hundreds of thousands of dollars for it. But I have nothing to show for examples. So I definitely appreciate the slow and steady and the secretive approach, because for me to make large investments, I want multiple examples. I want to see different interactions, and I want that confidence.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're spending that sort of money, you want proof. Like you want data to back it up. And
unless you're a gambling man, you just want to throw, some people are gambling people. I'm a little bit more conservative.
I like my money too much as well. So yeah, absolutely. So I've got a few pictures I took off your Instagram. I just want to talk about a few of these animals.
Sure.
Where is it? The first one. This was obviously, I heard you speaking on MJ's podcast, and he's the same. I was thinking, I haven't got that many that are straight up pictures. There are a lot of videos on there, but obviously you got into that. And if anyone wants to know why, they can go back and listen to that. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to put it out there. As soon as I listened to it, I tried what you said, and I was like, damn, he knows what he's talking about. Like,
it works.
I done a reel, and like literally within 32 minutes, it already had like 1,000 watches and stuff like that. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, I know I'm in contact consistently with a couple of major influencers who have a direct connection to Instagram, and I get a lot of information from them, as well as my own analytics. So I do understand the Instagram game very well. I haven't done well lately on my personal performance just because I haven't posted as much.
Yep.
The baby, the rats, the snakes, all these things. It's been challenging, and plus I don't. I kind of got bored of posting the same animals over and over and over again. So I'm kind of waiting on some clutches before I start posting. So, I used to post daily, and I went crazy in 2 months. I think I got like 25,000 followers when I was posting. But, lately I've been posting like once every 7 days, once every 10 days, or once every 5 days. Like I just been kind of slowing it down just because I'm waiting for that new exciting stuff to come to. But yeah, if anybody wants to grow their Instagram right now and you have the content and you're creative and you can put stuff together, it's all about the reels. It's a trade secret. And if you're just posting pictures and IGTV videos or just regular video posts, nothing's going to happen with it. They don't get pushed. It's all about the reels right now. And it's a very good piece of information for anybody watching. If you want that success, yeah, reels. Everything you post, reels, if you can, daily. You can see it. You can see I've gained. You can actually go to Social Blade and track anybody's analytics. If you look at my analytics over the last like 45 days, I think I've lost followers, not gained. But if you go, 30 days before that, I gained like 10,000. That's because I was posting every day. So the key to success is not just the reels, but the key is also posting every single day. You want to put something out there every day, and it has to be a good post, good lighting, good shot. It doesn't have to be a fancy snake. I mean, just because your snake's not bright orange and pretty like Justin's or Aussie's, or doesn't mean you can't get the success. I mean, I gave some great tips. I did a little bit of coaching with a guy in Montreal here, and he started applying some of the basic principles that I coached him on. And, he's been posting even one of his normals. I think one of his normals was locked up to like a pastel something. I mean, it wasn't like mind blowing, but he got like 500,000 views on it and a ton of followers. So I'm just trying to say, like, you don't need to have just the brightest, coolest, most insane animals on the planet to get the success. You could have literally anything, as long as the shot, it's the quality of the type of post, not necessarily the quality of the animal in the post that matters, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. Have you done a YouTube video about this sort of thing?
I haven't talked too much about it just because it's,
you don't want to give too much away.
It's not necessarily don't want to give too much away. It's just a lot of times people ask me for advice, and when I give them advice, they just end up telling me that they don't think that's going to work, or they just shoot it down, or they'll do what I tell them to do, and then 3 days later they'll stop doing it, and there's no consistency. Right. And it got to the point for me where it was so redundant, like, having the same speech over and over again with people, and then being told to my face that, well, I don't care about Instagram, I'm not going to do that, this and that. So then why are you asking me and making me spend 3 hours of my time explaining to you how to do it if it's not something that you want to apply? So I think I just kind of backed away from it. I think at the end of the day, if somebody genuinely cares about their Instagram following and they want to push their social media and they want to put the consistency, then I'm all open to it. But I don't want people to come to me and ask me questions and then just turn around and say, oh, it's not going to work, or this and that. Like it's worked for me. It's worked very well. Not in the last 30 days because again I've stopped posting as much. Yeah. But I'm probably going to make some sort of video. I was considering starting a Patreon page just because it seems to be a big thing now where a lot of breeders are starting Patreons. I wouldn't have like expensive tiers. I wouldn't want somebody to break the bank on that kind of information, but maybe I'll start a Patreon. So that way the people who do subscribe are genuine people who want to learn. Yeah. You're not going to have somebody paying $5 a subscription a month to just come and, mess around and they're actually going to want to absorb what you say. Yeah. And I might do a whole social media segment on, because it's like I had a phone call with Gavin, balls to you. And I wasn't even able to get through half of what he needs to do in 3-hour conversation. Like it's a very detailed process. There's many different things that have to be applied, but I'm considering, I might put out a poll, get a feedback. I don't know what you think about that, but I'd love to share it.
So I'm on Gav's and MJ's Patreon. And
great.
It's probably the best direct debit I pay each month. So definitely.
Yeah.
It's something that I'd be interested in for sure.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of UK people would as well, because you definitely have a decent follower, and a lot of people respect you over here as well. I think that has something to do with something I was going to bring up as well. Is you're one of the guys who always seem to get back to people, even if it's just someone commenting on your like stories or something. You'll always like that's something I was going to give you like credit for, because not half of the people out there actually do that. And I was just wondering if that was something to do with like the sort of like you were talking about earlier with your job and sort of the stuff you've learned, how to deal with people and stuff like that. Does that come from that? Like you always get back to people, you always, even if it's just like a thumbs up on a double tap on a comment or something.
So if there's two parts to that question. Part number one is if you are dropping comments on my posts, I do respond to every comment just because it counts as engagements. And then, people love following larger accounts. I'm not saying I have a large account because, 70,000 followers isn't large by, Instagram standards today, million plus is. But what I'm saying is people that follow larger-esque accounts, they like to follow and feel connected. Okay, it's part of the social media game is they want to feel connected to the people that are posting. And even if you're not genuine, even if you don't necessarily, if you're not reading the comment, you're just answering it, it still leaves the impression. I'm not saying that's what I do, and I'm saying if that's what you do, if you don't want to read every comment, but you just want to respond to them, it still gives the impression to the person who's engaging with your content that you care and that you are engaging back. And it gives them more incentive to come back and check your page out again, more and more and more. And that's what drives your following. That's what drives your engagements. And that's how Instagram tracks your metrics, because their sole goal is to have you watch as many advertisements as possible. And in order to do that, they need to keep you retained on the platform as long as possible. So they're not going to push accounts that don't do a good job at retaining an audience. They want to push accounts on the explore feed, push it on, when you scroll down through your Instagram, once you get past all the people you follow stuff, there's like discover and new stuff. Yeah. If you want to show up in that section to new prospective audiences, then you have to show Instagram that your content is engaging and has the ability to retain an audience. So that commenting to every post does that. Now, the second part of that question is a DM. I don't use DMs as a metric to improve Instagram performance. I just genuinely care about people who take the time to send me messages. I get a lot of messages a day, but there's literally every single day I spend at least an hour straight just responding to as many DMs. And the problem is sometimes when you respond to a DM, people log in right away and they start chatting with you. So it's like it turns into a conversation. But I try my best to get back to everybody within a reasonable time frame, because I find that there's some breeders, even in today's landscape, like there's larger breeders that even I will send a message to and I don't get responded to in 3 days or 4 days. And I don't know, when it comes to, it doesn't matter whether you're selling shoes, furniture, a house, a car, or snakes. If you're selling a product in general and somebody inquires, even if they're not buying, you never know when that person might become a buyer. You know what I mean? I spent a lot of time in Billy's facility before I ended up buying a snake from him. He gave me probably 3 weeks of his time before I even pulled the trigger on any animal. If he would have just dismissed me immediately, then would I have been a customer? Probably not. Yep. So my general mindset is to always, regardless if you are buying or not, if you ask me a question, if you send me a DM, I make every effort possible to respond to you within 24-hour period. Same thing with Morph Market. I don't know if you watched the full MJ podcast. I talked about this. Yep. I've sent inquiries to people on Morph Market, and a week later I get a response. I get up every day around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the washroom. I always bring my phone with me, because while I'm going to the washroom, I'm looking at my emails and seeing if I missed any Morph Market. If I see an inquiry, because a lot of the California or Western Coast people, they're 3 hours behind us. It might be 3 o'clock a.m. in my time, but for them, it's only 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock. If I see something and I got up to go to the washroom, before I sit back down and go back to bed, I'm going to actually respond to the person. And it's just how I am. I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but it's just my general philosophy is is if I'm awake, it doesn't matter what time of the day it is, doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I have my phone in my hand and I'm awake and I have the ability to answer you, I'm going to answer you, period. And that's just my mentality.
That's a pretty decent mentality to have. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that you blow my mind with all this, Instagram stuff. Yeah, I'm definitely going to try and up my game. Definitely. Let's get into these pictures quickly. So yeah, this was probably, I don't know why, this is probably my favorite picture on your Instagram. This one.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah, it's a good picture.
This is an awesome picture. It just, even though they're not exactly loud animals, it just stands out so much.
You're making me want to repost it now.
do it. So just for people who don't know, explain what the animals are.
So the bottom one is an MJ Xanthic Pied. So it's double recessive. And the top one is a GHI Mojave Ghost. GHI and Mojave are both codominant genes. And then the recessive is the hypo, which also known as ghost gene. So these are probably my two most viral snakes. Like every time I post them, they go complete viral. I mean, I average 500,000 views on the GHI Mojave and on the Lightning Pied. And I decided on this particular picture to put them both together to see what would happen. And again, this goes back to Instagram, is sometimes you just try different things. You know, you post a picture of a snake, or maybe you've got two snakes that perform really well. Let's see what happens when you put them both together in the same shot. You just try different things, but they're really good. The MJ, I'm really excited about the MJ line, Xanthics. I think it's a really relatively untapped project because everybody's been so focused on VPI. Most people say that the MJ is the best line. I mean, of course, that's subjective. It depends on who's who and who says what. I don't really get it.
I'd have to agree with you if you were saying that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I don't like, I won't flat out say it's true just because I never want to crap on someone else's project. If I come out on a video tomorrow and say that MJ is the best, then the guy who's producing cool VPI pies might take that as offense to that, right? Because they're passionate about their project. So I always say, I don't really know. I know that my MJ Pied is probably one of the nicest Xanthic pies I've ever seen, but I don't know if that's just because she's a good example of MJ, because there's always good and bad examples of every gene. So I don't know if I just got lucky and I got a good example, or if it's genuinely attributed to the line. I don't know. All I know is she's gorgeous. She's got bright white. The saddles are super contrasty, and she just is so clean. And she's going to breed for me next year, so I'm so excited.
Okay.
Everybody around me that has MJ Xanthics are just reproducing MJ Xanthics, except for one guy that I know. So I just want to get on that train and start producing combos. I want to get more genes into it. I want to see what it does, and I'm just going to work the slow project and see where it goes. And I don't know if you guys have access to that project out where you are, but if you do.
Yeah. Actually, a friend of mine who lives about 15 minutes down the road. So basically, we produce rats together to feed both our collections. So I'm at his quite a lot. So he's in that. Basically, he produced one last year from I think it was a Pied MJ to a double het. So he produced one last year, and a few days after he came in and it was dead. So it was kicking him big time. Yeah. So but so basically after that happened, he said he wasn't going to try again, and he sort of left it a while, and he decided to go again this year. I think he had some eggs drop the other day. I'm not 100% sure. I think it was that pairing, but sometimes shit things happen in this industry.
Yep.
Can't be helped.
Yep.
It's not all roses at the end of the day.
And the GHI Mojave Ghost is like I talked to her about her on my last podcast, but she's my worst eater in my entire collection. She, for some reason, never wants to push past 1,200 grams. She eats one rat every 4 to 6 months. At this point,
so what size is she there?
She's been the same size. She's about 1,100 grams in that shot. She hasn't grown at all in 2 years.
Right.
She's just a worst eater. She's very stubborn. She's healthy. She's not lethargic. Mm-hmm. She moves around. So what I've basically done is I've just I've considered moving on from her and selling her, but I said, you know what? It doesn't cost me any money to keep her. She is one of the most visually stunning snakes that I have. I mean, it's not an expensive combo morph. It's not a super hard morph to make, but it's just visually striking. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to make her a pet. I'll try to breed her. I mean, I have put a couple of locks on her to see if she would eat, and that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to stop trying. But as of right now, she's a cool pet. I pick her up. I look at her. I love the colors. And, you know, I would love to reproduce some more of them because I just think they're really, really cool. But right now she's become just a JP Reptiles pet.
So that's exactly the same as I kind of look at it. So Hypo goes.
By the way, sorry, I just got to use the washroom.
Yeah, go for it.
But I can still hear you, so keep going.
Okay, yeah. So Hypo and Ghost are not majorly in my plans, but the GHI Mojave Hypo is probably, like you say, it's an absolute stunning animal. And if I could, I would have one in my racks tomorrow. But then, like I say, I'm not that into hypo and that. I'd probably, like you say, it would probably just be a pet. It'd just be a pleasure for my eyes to open that tub every day when I go into my snake room, just to look and drool over that animal. But I probably wouldn't have any plans for it. Yeah, what an animal to have. Who's in the comments?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no. I was just saying, like, I'm not too much into the hypo and stuff, but I'd love that animal. Just like you say, just every time you're in your snake room, just open that drawer and just ogle over that animal. Like I say, that the hypo, basically, I had a GHI Mojave, and unfortunately, it passed. But that was the end goal, and that was the end goal. I wouldn't want to do anything else with it. I wouldn't have any other plans to do anything.
That's where I'm at. I bought her with the intentions on making more of them because, like I could add chocolate to it. I've seen a GHI Mojave Ghost with pastel in it, which I think looks. I know people hate on pastel, but I think in that combo, pastel looks good too. Chocolate looks good. And like, you could push the envelope and add a couple of those genes, but at the end of the day, it's just such a visually. If you had 20 of those at a booth at a show, all 20 of them would sell. No question.
All day. Yeah.
All day long. It's just, and that's why not every single combo needs to have quote unquote improvements. I think there's some combos out there that just, you know what? We hit it. We did it.
Absolutely.
Yes, we want to push the envelope as much as possible, but sometimes it's okay just to hang up our hat and said, we did it. And I think that is the one snake where I don't know who was the first guy to make it, but if I was him, I would say, I did it.
Job done.
Job done. It's a great animal.
The GHI Mojave is this the clown version? Is that right?
Yeah, so that's my GHI Mojave clown, and hopefully she's going to breed next year. She's just passed the 1,000-gram mark, so I'm really happy, really excited.
Yeah. So I didn't really take in consideration GHI Mojave into clown. And then I saw this. I was like, wow, I want one of them as well.
Yeah, so in this particular combo, I think it works good. Like I said before, I'm not a huge fan right now of GHI clowns in general. She's the only GHI that I have in visual clown form. And the reason why is because from the very limited stuff that has been done with GHI clown, I just feel like GHI, for some reason, is one of those genes that seems to just really fade out very quickly. I mean, most snakes start to lose color and fade around that 800-900 gram range. But the GHIs clowns that I've seen are like much sooner. So I'm not a big fan so far, but with Mojave in that, and I've also seen a version, I think Will Nussman is the one that made it. He made a GHI Mojave pastel something. I think it was a hypo. I forget. I got to look it up, but it was like mind blowing. So I still think we need to find the right genes to mix with it to make it super spectacular. But that particular combo with just Mojave and GHI works really well. And I think, you know, Desert Ghost might do something really crazy. I know. I think that's just going to lift that up. I think There's big potential with hypo as well. I'm like you. I'm not huge on hypo, but I do like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those situations where I've basically told myself, like, I can't have everything.
Yeah,
I'll go.
other things going. Yeah.
There's just so much going on. I can't have everything. So I am into the hypo game, but on a smaller scale, just because I have so many other projects on the go and I can't take on more. But I think if there's anybody out there that's working the hypo game, I think GHI Mojave Clown Hypo would be beautiful as well.
So this next one's not a bad project to be in either.
Yeah, the monsoon. I have a love-hate relationship with this girl.
Wow.
I love the monsoon project. It's going to be one of the founding things for my collection. But this girl, I'm telling you, I don't know what she's doing, but she never misses a meal. She's like 3,000 grams now, and this is the
3,
second year. Yeah, and this is an old picture.
Wow.
She's close to 3,000 now. I would say she's probably around 2,700 if I had to guess. And this is the second year in a row she hasn't gone for me. She hasn't built follicles at all.
Oh, that's a kick in the nuts.
And I'm just like, what's going on here? I mean, she's been locked so many times. She's got the weight. She's got the age. She's not a young snake. I'm just like, what is this girl's deal? I don't get it. So that's why I'm super happy with her. I love her. But every time I open that tub, I say, girl, what is going on with you?
Yeah. Swearing a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Last year, go ahead.
I'm gonna call it now. Next year, 16 eggs. Yeah.
Oh man, I hope so. I hope so because the monsoon thing is just, I think, is going to be fantastic. And there's a guy in South Africa. He made I forget what he called it, but he made this pied, this world's first pied combo, and I thought it was a monsoon pied because it looked monsoon. Mm-hmm. And he was reassuring me that it's not monsoon, but I think the monsoon pied is going to look like that snake. And if it does, it's going to be insane. Like, I think I love what Roland has done with the moray clowns. From what I understand, moray and monsoon are most likely the same gene.
Right.
And he's made the moray clown, and it looks great. So I think monsoon has huge legs in both pied and clowns. So
is that where you were trying to take it this year, and it didn't?
Yeah, I bred her to several times to my Fire ODYB spot nose clown.
Right.
Because I think from what I've seen so far with monsoon, the light genes work really well. So I was hoping for some good stuff through there. But it was a toss up, man. Like I was really struggling with the decision on to go with pied or the clown, and I ended up decided to go with the clown.
It's a no lose situation. Let's face it.
Are you trying to feed me? Sorry, my partner's trying to feed me.
That's it. These podcasts can be, you got to get your electrolytes and your protein.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't know how big monsoon is out in your neck of the woods, but I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, it's big. It is big, but I think we're kind of watching what you guys do from afar. I don't think it's massively accessible over here. I think people in Germany are working with it, if I'm not mistaken. But no, obviously Billy's mad on it. Like I said, I knew you had it. So yeah, we're kind of watching from afar. That's basically what we're doing at the moment. What other pictures I've got here? That's this one.
Ah, yes. The snake I should have never sold.
Oh, you sold it? Yes,
I did.
Okay, first of all, what is it?
So I had this labeled, I forget how I labeled it. It was a orange, I labeled it as an orange dream, probably yellow belly banana leopard clown. And it was a male. And it came from a female banana, so it was a female making male.
Wow.
Now, the reason why I ended up selling it is because I didn't think at the time I needed more males. I was pretty confident in the arsenal of males that I had that I was going to get the job done. And unfortunately, my males didn't get the job done that year. It would have been nice to hold it back. And I love banana. So I always regretted selling that snake, but the individual who bought it is in love with it. I think he's been breeding it already. And I don't know, just orange dream and banana is so hard to identify. It's just, I sent the picture off to many breeders and got so many opinions. I did the research on it, and there was just this element of dark orangey richness to it that you just wouldn't find from a regular like fire banana leopard clown or something. So it was either orange dream or yellow belly that was influencing it, or maybe both. I didn't know. I was pretty confident, but I didn't know. And the breeder agreed with the guy who bought it, agreed with my assessment on it. And I'm looking forward to him getting back to me, letting me know, because I want to know for sure. Because if my assessment is 100% for sure on that, then it's going to give me the knowledge to kind of what to look for in future pairings and future hatchlings. Because now I know maybe what those genes do to the banana on that side.
It's kind of what we were saying earlier. Like, obviously you hatched it, so even though you've sold it, you know what it looked like when it came out of the egg. And
exactly. I've got it. So every hatchling that hatches, I take. I only post like 2 or 3 pictures on Morph Market, but I have a dozen pictures in a portfolio.
Okay.
So I take many shots of every hatchling that I've made, in different angles, from the top, from the bottom, from the sides, and I keep them in a portfolio on my computer, so that way I can always refer back to them for future understanding of genetics as they start to hatch. And that's why I keep them. So I've got a big gallery of that snake's pictures, and I'm definitely going to be waiting to hear back on 100% accurate on those genes. And if it is what we both thought it was, then it's going to arm me with great knowledge for future identification.
Wicked. So he's breeding that already. So
I think so.
You should know well in the next within 6 months.
I would say so. Yeah.
Wow. So this is another special animal.
Yes.
So
that is an orange dream hypopide.
Oh.
And I really, really like the Aussie stuff. Now, I didn't buy that snake from Aussie. I got it from a guy in Canada at Marcus Jane Ball Pythons. But
okay.
I ended up getting inspired from Aussie's hypopide projects at the shows and from what I've seen online. And I was like, again, talking about how I can't get into everything, but I wanted to get a small footprint. So I picked up that animal at a show. Mark gave me a great deal on it. She's a bit of a fussy eater. Unfortunately, she's lagging behind some of my other pides, but she'll get there eventually, and it's just going to be my ticket into the hypopide projects.
That's an amazing animal. Very jealous. But what you were saying about Aussie, some of Aussie's pides he's producing this season, it's just your take on them. They're just.
I think every season. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that can touch him on the pied game. I think he's just got. If you're looking for light and bright pieds, he's the guy. I don't think there's anybody else out there.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think he just made the world's first multi-combo Desert Ghost pied too. I think. Didn't he just post an orange dream leopard, yellow belly something Desert Ghost pied? Like he is on another level with pieds, and I think he is. You just can't touch him. Nobody can.
Yeah, absolutely. What's this one?
So that is one of my favorite pickups from last year. This was labeled as an Orange Dream Vanilla Cream Clown. It was from Mark Bailey, one of the nicest guys I've ever met in the industry.
Right.
And he gave me a steal of a deal on it. It's a beautiful female. She eats every single week. She's fantastic. She's like triple the size since this picture. And funny enough, the story is that Mark Bailey had Aussie help him ship the snake up to me. So he had to ship the snake to Aussie's place. Aussie repacked it and shipped it up to me. And Aussie had asked Mark Bailey for the parents because he thought there was a little bit more going on there. He didn't think it was just an Orange Dream Vanilla Cream Clown. So Mark Bailey ended up telling him, well, there was actually Orange Dream on both parents. So Aussie believes, apparently, that snake is a super OD. It's probably going to prove out super OD. So Mark Bailey told me that after I got the snake, and I was like, really? Wow. That's exciting. But I love the Vanilla Cream projects. I wish I got into it sooner. I didn't know much about it when I first got into the industry, but had I have known what I know today, I love the vanilla cream stuff. I think it's really cool. I know fire can be limiting. Some people like fire is great, but some people shy away from it because if you get it on both sides, obviously you get a white snake, right? But if you can work around that drawback and you can make some really, really stunning animals with vanilla cream, like some absolutely stunning animals.
Yeah. So did you say that was male or female?
That was a female.
Okay. And breeding next season?
Probably not next year, probably the year after.
Right. Okay.
If she goes next year, it'll be like the end of next year.
Right. Okay. Okay. So just to sort of, we're near the end. Just to finish off, like I said, I am a member of Gav's Patreon. So when I knew you were coming on, I sort of put it out there. If any of them had questions for you, I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
For you, Andy at Club More Pythons, we've pretty much covered this question, which I kind of laughed about earlier because I knew this was coming up. He said, "What would you change anything about how you set up or invested to get to this point?" And we sort of kind of covered that, where you said you'd buy more adults, and
well, not necessarily more adults. What I was basically getting at is, sorry, in our neck of the woods, it's quote unquote dinner time. So she's just feeding me on the side. I hope you don't mind.
No. That's teamwork. Thanks for joining work.
Exactly. But I don't want to say, because I don't want people to get the impression like I should buy more adults. That's something that I'm saying. I'm very happy with the way I did it. It's just, if you're going to do it the way I did it, where it's all straight hatchlings, it's going to take you a lot longer to get to results. But then again, your goal shouldn't be strictly about how fast can I produce and how much money can I make. That should never be your goal. So if you have the patience to wait it out, because one of the things I was saying was, you might buy 100 hatchlings tomorrow, but you don't know how they're going to turn out. Some of them will become picky eaters. Some of them will take long months off. Some of them will fast. Some of them won't. You're not going to get 100 females breeding, 2 years after you bought them, or 3 years, even in that case. I'm on year 3, and I would say next year is going to be my 4th year breeding. And I think 35 to 40% of the initial collection is going to breed. So that's in 4 years. So it can take quite a bit of time to get there. There's also some genes that apparently don't do as well in terms of thriving. Like there's talk about from some breeders that certain, I don't want to say anything specific just because I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression, but some people believe that certain genetics eat better than others. I don't know if it's just, again, anecdotal or if it's true, but there is some belief in that. But what I'm basically saying is, if I had to start all over again, 2 things I would have changed. The initial 2 things that come to my mind is, number 1, I would have still bought a bunch of hatchlings, but maybe instead of, my entire collection of hatchlings, maybe like 80%, 70%, and maybe try to pick up some older females or a couple of proven breeders, but make sure you ask the right questions just to have a good little mix, because sometimes you want to be able to produce some animals yourself to run back. Like there's nothing more satisfying than having a pairing where both mom and dad are, or at least the dad is something you produced. Mm-hmm. So there's certain stuff that I would have liked to make to run back to my females, and I could have done that a bit better. But again, this is just nitpicking. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I don't think buying all adults or established collections is the way to go. I think that's the other end of the spectrum. So something in the middle. The second thing I would have done differently is just planned out the rodent situation a bit better. I had a long talk with Gavin about this, and it's so true what he said. It's everybody talks and thinks about breeding snakes. And when it comes down to it, breeding ball pythons is not hard. It's not rocket science. It's you put 2 snakes together and you let nature take its course. It's pretty simple. So we all get excited to breed, and we all get excited to buy animals, put animals, but not many people, in fact, very few people, I would say, put the same amount of research, time, and energy into figuring out how they're going to feed those collections. Okay. When you have 10, 15, 20 snakes, not necessarily a big deal. When you start pushing that 100 plus, now you're starting to order 100 rats a week. That's 400 rats a month. You got to deal with costs. It costs me about $800 a month to feed my collection.
Right. Wow.
Okay. If everything eats,
yep.
If everything doesn't eat, then maybe 600. That can add up pretty quickly. Then you got to worry about where the rats are coming from. You got to worry about if these suppliers are able to supply you, if they're going to be running out. And I think that's what led to my issues with last winter was we didn't have contingencies in place. We didn't have a plan B because we just assumed that we're always going to have readily available rodents. And unfortunately, when something happens at one of these suppliers where they have a flood, or they have a couple of bins, or they lose a few animals, or they have too many customers they can't supply, and you're left in the dust, it can happen. That affects your production, because if your snakes are not getting calories, they're not reproducing. So what I would tell everybody is, before you start acquiring large quantities of animals, be prepared for the costs in feeding them, and especially if you did it the way I did. That's 3 years before you get any meaningful production. Okay. Those first 2 or 3 years, you're not producing. All of that money to feed all those animals is straight out of your pocket, because you're not making any revenue. You're not producing nothing. You're not selling anything. That's all out of your pocket. So you have to plan for that, right?
Yep.
And then make sure that you have a plan B and a plan C and multiple suppliers, and just put the same energy into getting rodents properly. And that's it, really. I'm pretty happy. Yeah, there's, if you really want me to nitpick, I could go in my facility and look at a few animals where I said, maybe I shouldn't have bought that, or maybe I should have stayed away from this. We all have that, but I think it's so minor. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the way the collection has turned out. Things have turned out.
Yeah. Cool. So Zoe at Northern Bulls asks, do you have any long-term plans with projects, or do you only think one season ahead with all the new genes that keep coming out?
That's a tough question. I do think long-term, but I don't think too far ahead, because I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I think I set goals every season on what I'd like to do. And my goals always change year to year, because it really depends on what I've hatched. Like, for example, this year, I was blessed. I mean, my first clutch where I hit that spot nose, red stripe, yellow belly clown, double het lavender pied, I have a grail on the shelf that's ready to breed for that male. But when you plug in those combos into that pairing into morph market, the odds of hitting that snake is like 1 in, 64. Like, it's terrible odds, right? So you have these plans, but sometimes your odds are just so bad that you can't really rely on it. If it happens, it's great. So what I'm trying to say basically is, you can set a general goal and a plan for a season, but what you end up hatching is going to ultimately dictate whether or not you stick with that plan or you make changes to the plan. Right. That's what I basically did. Same thing with, in the beginning, when I first started acquiring animals, I put a huge emphasis on long-term plans. But if you asked me 2 years ago if one of my primary projects was going to be Desert Ghost Clowns, I would have said no, absolutely not, because I have so much other stuff. But guess what? All of my DG clowns are my best eaters. They've outperformed all the other snakes. They've grown twice as fast. They are ready to go. There are some projects that I told myself, this is what I want. This is what I want. This is the first stuff I want to make. And those females became bad eaters, and they are way behind. So these things will constantly change depending on the snake, depending on its behavior, on its growth rate, and depending on what you hatch and how good or how bad your odds are. That will dictate. So short answer is, make a general plan, but don't be afraid every year to make changes or modify the plan.
Right. When you said, if you put all these genes in morph market, I thought you were going to say it crashes the website.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. JM Royals, in your opinion, how does the future of the industry hobby look?
I think right now, I shouldn't say right now, I think over the last 3 years, it's been insane. I mean, when I first got into this in 2018, the shows were big, but I went to almost every major show in the US in 2019, and I went to the Arlington show in 2020. And every show, even throughout the same year, got bigger, stronger. And I remember the announcer at Tinley. I know I went in the spring, and then I went to the fall show, and then every single time the announcer at every show would come on and say, we broke a record this weekend. Well, we were just here like 6 months ago with a show. How do we break a record again in 6 months? And so it's like, they're constantly setting records, because Tinley tracks sales. Like, all of the breeders have to report their sales, and they want to know how many dollars goes through the entire venue and all that stuff. And, it was breaking records and records. More and more people are coming in. More people are doing social media. That's getting out there. The only thing that scares me in the industry, because I don't want to say that nothing does, but the only thing that scares me is the constant barrage of attacks from politicians who are not educated, or to animal rights activists that are trying to shut us down constantly. I mean, there was a proposed legislation in New York about I don't know the whole story, but I just know some politician brought a bill forward. They wanted to ban all animals from being transported: dogs, cats, birds, fish, reptiles, you name it. They don't want any animal to be able to be shipped.
What?
Yeah, it didn't go anywhere, but it's just silly things like that. So that's the only thing that scares me. But so far there isn't, anything pressing. And I think the more and more traction the industry gets, the way it is, the harder it's going to be for these politicians and these people to push these agendas. And if you look at it today versus when I first got in, and that's only over a 3-year period, it's like, I would say doubled. I mean, in my experience, it's just, it's unbelievable. It was almost unbelievable. Last year I sold most of my animals within 24 hours of posting them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if anybody's afraid to buy or afraid of the market, trust me, I feel more comfortable about buying snakes than I do about, buying a lot of other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's fun. That's the best part about it, is you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah. About buying animals, I see a snake on Morph Market, I'll go straight on Instagram and see if they've got an Instagram. If they've got an Instagram and they've got like picture, I feel so much more comfortable in sending a deposit over and stuff like that. So that goes back to having kind of like a portfolio on Instagram, a business, and
100%.
But I know what you're saying with buying and whatnot. Absolutely. I've got one more question for you. Do you have anything else apart from ball pythons, snake wise?
I do. So I wanted to kind of set up this like little projects room, kind of like what Justin's doing. Okay. Because I don't get me wrong, I love my ball pythons. I absolutely love the stuff I work with. But sometimes, there's times where you're in your facility or in your snake room or wherever you have your animals, and you just, once in a while, it would be nice to just pick something out that's a little bit different. Yes. And so that's why I'm setting up a little projects room. I picked up 3 super dwarf retics. So I have 3 of them. I'm not going to buy any more. It was just that. I got 2 females and a male. I have no intentions on breeding them at all. It was just because I like their colors. And, if I ever do events, if we ever get out of this COVID landscape and I can go to schools or do events or social media stuff, I've got something a little bit different to show. So that's why I picked those things up. And they're really cool. The retics are, it's really fascinating to watch how their eyeballs like literally make eye contact with you and they look at you before they it's so cool. And then I picked up my first boa because I love black snakes. Like, I don't know why, they just mesmerize me completely. And the IMG boas are just out of this world. And I picked up an IMG. Yeah, I picked up an IMG Anery Motley boa. Apparently Anery and Motley IMGs are the darkest you can make them. And she's still a baby and she's almost jet black already. And her tongue is jet black. Her eyes are jet black. Her scales on her belly are black. Like, it's just, I would say she's hands down the most beautiful snake in my collection right now.
Wow. That's saying a lot.
So I love her. And another thing I was told, again, I don't have the experience. I don't know if it's true, but another thing I was told is that IMGs don't, for some reason, they don't grow as large as like a typical standard Colombian boa. They usually max out around 6-7 feet. So we'll see. I am going to pick up a couple more boas. I love the white snakes as well. I'm going to get a moon glow. And again, nothing earth shattering. I don't want to be a boa breeder. I don't want to be pushing the envelope on genetics. I just want a nice wall of some different animals that are fun to look at. A white boa, a black boa, a couple of retics, maybe something else, and just something to have a little change, a little difference in the facility, and just mix it up a little bit.
Yep. Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Yeah. I love my ball pythons, but over the last 2-3 years, I've obviously Instagram's grown. I see what other people are doing, what other people's other snakes other people have, and I really want a white-lipped python as well.
Oh,
yeah. I love watching MJ's stories when he gets his white lips and stuff.
Yeah, he's got some really cool snakes.
He's a few different animals. So he's always a good. I always make sure I'm sitting down and watching his stories. Like, I've got nothing else to do, so I'm just like, yeah. two and a half hours sort of flew by. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, awesome. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again soon. Maybe like end of the year when you've got everything out, all your hatchlings.
Yeah, we're having
out.
a really, really late season this year.
Yeah.
I've got 2 clutches hatching next month, and then everything else is going to be starting to come out in the fall. So then I'll be hatching probably near the end of the year, which is crazy. It's just such a late season. So
yeah.
You're not going to see too much activity from me on Instagram and Facebook right now and YouTube, just because even if I want to get back to my all-time highs of social media, I don't have the crazy content to post right now because I'm waiting for everything to come out patiently. But once we start hatching and once I start getting some stuff on the ground, then I would love to come back and chat about it and talk about the projects. And, by the end of this year, I'll have a pretty good idea on what I'm going to be doing for next year.
Yeah. So what clutch is supposed to pip next for you? The pairing on it.
Banana Clown female to the Pompeii male.
Oh, good one.
Yeah. So the best case there would be a Banana Pompeii or another Pompeii.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'll definitely keep my eyes open for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, yeah, really appreciate your time, and we'll chat again soon. So
sounds great.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it, JP. Catch you later.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you. Bye. Oh, awesome. When we first started, I said to JP, 90 minutes would really make me happy. So we got 2.5 hours. So I am over the moon. So if you weren't with us before we started, I'm just saying that the podcast will go to once or twice a month now. Hoping to get more international guests on. I've got a few in the works. Not to mention a couple more Canadians as well. Just put it out there. Just get the rumor started. But from me tonight, hope everyone enjoyed, and make sure you're checking out the Instagram, my YouTube channel as well, keeping up to date and keeping up to date with any news on my next guest. So later on, people, I will see you on the next one.